Hello, and this is Spotlight, recorded live here on Grapple Patreon. I'm Benno.
And I'm JP.
And we're a little bit late starting for our live patrons who are joining us at patreon.com/grapple and youtube.com/@grapple. But I rushes onto the air, JP, because I didn't want to ruin the conversation off air about, you haven't noticed it yet, a lovely polo top that I'm wearing here, and care of New Japan Pro Wrestling, or Shin Nihon Pro Wrestling, to those of us who are freaks who just love the stuff, to us, yeah. To us hardcores who been to Corrigan Hall, gone up those steps, added some graffiti to the wall, It's for the proper ones, My inbox is open if anybody wants to ask me to join any podcast out there that cover such matters or something like that. But thought I'd dress up for the occasion, JP. Literally the smartest shirt that I own at this point, because everything else I own is plain black t-shirts, plain white t-shirts, and a couple of bonus wrestling shirts that I did buy in Japan and Bangkok. But this has got a collar and everything, JP. I think it's a G1 33 polo top. I'm pretty sure the referees wore it during it, but to me, it's just be smart polo now for all occasions.
It is. Do you know it has big Formula One vibes? For like when you see the lads, not the lad like the pit crew or the driver, but all the other fellas, and it has that kind of vibe to it as well, and it does look smart. I thought the cap might be New Japan or a Japanese influence. I haven't bought one yet. Nah, soon enough. Give it time as well. But it does look nice. It was only when you sort of sat up and I could see the New Japan, I was like, oh, that's one of the fancy things that he bought from there as well. Who won? I'll quickly look it up. G130.
I'm pretty sure it was Naito. That was what I think me and Steph had this conversation. I was like, watch it turn out to be the evil one or something like that. If Evil did. I'm a hardcore New Japan fan, JP. Obviously, I know the G1 result, and I know that Evil couldn't have possibly won that year. But I thought that might be me luck. But yeah, big Naito fan, I'll get myself on it. Yeah, Castrol GTX bomber jacket. Maybe I could. Maybe New Japan needs to get in the business of doing some of those. That could be a plan. My favorite G1, as Connor says there. Yeah, I'm sure I'll just reel off the memories. It's one of those many G1s, JP, that we covered in such detail on these shows. I've pretty much the last 15 minutes for an entire summer 3 years ago, I think it was. So there we go.
We're a long way away from like daily coverage of the G1, every single show, all of the time. And
remember that?
We went shit.
Great times then.
Yeah, they were great times. I tell you why they were great times, mate. Because the tournament was class from like beginning to end. It was always good stuff. And even the lull.
And the biggest problem in our life was Goto and Yoshihashi. Remember them days? Jesus.
Oh. God, I mean, but then you actually did feel like a Toriano match was a break. The closest thing I can think of when you would go through those endurance, I'm going to watch every match in a G1, is that thing that people do they call raw dogging. Now, stick with me on this. It's not a dirty line. But when they go on planes.
Raw dog the flight, I did that.
Yep. And just sit down and just look at the map. And just not move from the seat, not have any water or anything else. It feels like it's that kind of endurance. Obviously, you cheat on that front. You'd have to sort of have some sort of drink or food during the G1 for it. But it was a hell of an endurance contest, wasn't it? Those were the days.
Remember the G1? Yeah, I agree with Simon in the chat there. But I was going to say, we've turned ourselves to babyfaces tonight, JP. Professional starters as always, but we've been heels this weekend, and we're probably going to throw some audio at the end of this. So if you're a freeloader, stay tuned to the end. We'll have a little 10-minute preview of the show we did this weekend, which was 5-1 Samoans, or as you put it on our doc here, crispy Samoans, as we did also talk about crisps. And that, to be honest, as we expected, has dominated the conversation since we recorded it. Although we have had a bit of a few pelters for some of the Samoan choices. Maybe Matty talked us into certain people being higher than they should be. Maybe we talked Matty into certain people being higher than Matty would like. But yeah, it's created the normal controversy here, JP. And I don't know if we want to put anything to bed here or right any wrongs that were done on that podcast.
Well, we're not wrong. That much I would stick. I'd go from that.
It's the closest I'd say we're right, because we did the chocolate one, and to be honest, once we finished and I looked at the list, I was like, we got that completely wrong, and I didn't agree with any of the choices that I was part of the panel in agreeing to go on. The crisps one seems the least controversial, outside of a couple of things that, and yet right before we went live, it was StreamYard had a bit of a problem. I was trying to share my screen, and I had a problem with my mic, and I had to reset, and I lost the order we were going to do. It wasn't on purpose, but there were a couple of ones that people have said since that weren't there that should have been. Ready Salted Hula Hoops was one that I might have even backed as a ready salted hater going in there. Flaming Hot Cheetos weren't discussed, and I feel like can we just agree now they would have gone straight to number one along with the other Flaming Hot crisps that we threw in there. No other spoilers, just saying. But outside of that, I think people have mostly gone, I don't agree with your ready salted slander I've heard from a few people. Liam wasn't happy with
Liam's
that. But
hipster
outside of that,
talk,
people
isn't it?
people are on our side. Yeah, some people disagreeing with us on whether Twiglets were crisps or not. I had Hamflet me mentions he's he's a Twiglet lover like me. There was a few like that, wasn't there? Scampy fries, we weren't sure that they counted as a crisp. But yeah, you could listen to it. So give us your feedback, give us your hate mail. But yeah, not been too much of it.
I honestly think, like, bring it on, because it's just a debate is the thing that you just love about this more than anything else, because it's so subjective. Like, what crisps do you like? Is there
even between the four of us, because we have to agree.
Exactly, it's the most subjective question you can kind of ask people from a snack related basis. I know I had a few comments back to me about my comments about beef hula hoops, which I'll leave off this one. If you want to know what I said about that, you can listen to the show on the Patreon. But I just love the debate. I just love how people, like, it gets people animated. But I'm also kind of with Gareth in the sense that I can't hate crisps. There's very few crisps I go, like, that's unedible. I cannot eat it. I can't. Yeah. I don't even want to go anywhere near it.
Even the worst crisps, if they're in the cupboards and you're starving and there's nothing left. Even me, I confessed on the show, I hate cheese. If there's all is left is cheese crisps, I'll even break that rule. Like, any crisp is a good crisp. Outside the Pom Bears, we stand firm on them. But outside of that, and are they even really crisps? We can have that conversation again.
And Simon mentions it, the lack of Seabrooks. I've got like proper nostalgic memories of Seabrooks, because there was a point in time you couldn't buy them down south. The only place I could eat them is when we were going up to visit my nan in Yorkshire, and then I could actually have some Seabrooks. And so it felt like this special, like dandelion and burdock. It was like this kind of like special treat that you could have, but we can't cover all of the crisps. If I had my way, like with that early crinklies one that was in there, very early doors, we would have got rid of that. But that's the thing; it's kind of impossible because there's so many to kind of get through. But I thought we absolutely I thought we did an absolutely banging job. Yeah. The Samoan stuff was...
that many. we kind of had a list of 20 odd, didn't we? And then we threw some other islanders at the end. But like, there were controversial moments on that one as well, just to sell it. There is, of course, a classic me and Matty argument on. I almost think, like, again, without spoiling too much, I feel like I could have settled that, JP. Maybe if I could have done a deal with the devil. Maybe if I could have got a certain person to agree that a certain Samoan Joe was a number 2 tier and not a number 1 tier. Maybe I could have, exchanged for that, as a few people have actually said in the feedback since, a number 2 spot for the other Samoan Joe, and maybe put Rock on his own near the top. But I don't know. You have to listen to find out exactly where they all landed. But it got as far as you'd imagine. And to be honest, we had more agreement than I'd imagine. I'd say, in moments, Matty was extremely unreasonable. In other moments, I think we kind of, peace in the Middle East, we kind of figured it out, and we agreed on some things you might not expect us to agree on. Yeah, people are still going on about the crisp in the chat, by the way. No one cares about the Samoans, do they? Oh, well.
No, don't really.
And that's the clip I'm going to include at the end as well. Listen, stay to the end to hear the Samoan chat. That's my sample job on it.
But it's and the Samoan chat was really, because it was a lot more sort of broader and thoughtful than you kind of think it would be from us. Like, you might just think, well, it's just going to get very partisan very quickly, and it really didn't. Yeah. Outside of Matty's rather inexplicable Samoa Joe hatred. Like, and just kind of like just not seeing the things that even me and Gareth, who, we weren't as we have through recording shows on it, not been as au fait with sort of Samoa Joe's Ring of Honor run. And now, like, well, actually, look,
which is enough to make him number 1, by the way, just to say. But anyway,
it is, and it's honestly, I think it's an absolute, like, the chat about the Usos as well individually, and it's like that's a lot more nuanced than I thought. It didn't turn into just like, right, we're just going to slag off Jey Uso for a bit. It was like, well, actually, you got to take these little things into consideration. So I think it's an absolutely brilliant show and a cracking way to start off November. Honestly, just
spirited audio. If there ever was one out there. And we'll have to figure out what we'll do next. Premier League football, this is definitely on the agenda for non-wrestling, and maybe another wrestling one. Maybe do some kind of WWE champions one to follow up the WCW champions, or something a bit more wacky. Let us know if you've got any suggestions. But obviously, not the only thing going on the Patreon this week, JP.
No, there isn't. Marty Ellis appeared on the pre-show. Do you want to have a listen to that? You can go back and listen to that for free. The One Giant Year for Mankind. 1 year, 1999, in the career of Mick Foley, who, by all accounts, has got a new lease on life. So, I mean, I think even he might be up for having a listen to this one. Exactly, maybe he'll join us. Yeah, as well. Do you know what? You'd probably have to give him a few quid. knowing what Mick's like in there. But he's dropped a hell of a lot of weight on him as well, and he's had the hip and the knee replacements there, so he seems to be in kind of good form. 60 years old now at this stage. Makes me feel I remember him as a young fella in WCW and bloody global. So
that's my Foley. That's what I want to cover. I want to cover Cactus Jack and WCW. But I'm saying that Foley in '99, which again is Marty's choice, brilliant. Is a crack. It's an amazing. It's a real blind spot. Like, how did none of us think about covering a year like that? And obviously we'll cover Halftime Heat, I believe, is in there, as well as obviously Foley's big title win. And we can have the conversation about him being very clearly not Triple H, who will tell you otherwise in interviews and on literally on Monday Night Raw this week. He's the third man, isn't he, behind Rock and Austin, for my money, in 1999. So there's loads of it that I'm looking. Again, it's one that suits Matty very much so, because there's a few heavy angles in there as well, but some good matches in there to chat as well. So we have, obviously, not often we have a new King of the Mountain, so excited to chat to Marty at the weekend as well, find out a bit more about him as well. So should be a corker of a show. And as you say, we've got that coming up. Obviously got plenty more coming up in November. We do have the 6 tape, which again does not sound better the more that you say it, coming up on Sean Maltman at the end of the month, as well as your quiz, which I'm told behind the scenes you and young Connor have been putting some work in for. So very much looking forward to that as well. And I want to throw in a quick plug. I know we go heavy on the plugs, but obviously this is a Wednesday spotlight again, 2 weeks in a row. Sorry, we're still trying to get into the swing of things. I don't always love it, because it's a Dynamite night, isn't it? So it always feels weird to record on a Wednesday. So if you are looking for our blood and guts takes here on if you're listening to this on Thursday morning, we'll have them on the weekend show on Friday. I don't often say it, but you can join the Patreon for free. You can do a free trial. You can bugger up after that. Use a new email address. I do that when I sign up for stuff, or I use Garrett's email address, one or the other. I'm not asked. Just join up. We don't necessarily even really want your money. It's just a case of getting everybody on board and getting them in the door on the Patreon. We'll take the money too, in fairness, very obviously too. But we'll be doing that obviously on the weekend show this week. So do want our full blood and guts review. We'll be doing that on weekend show on Friday. And we don't plug that one enough, JP.
No, we don't, and it's always a corker to do. Even when, like last week, there was bugger all to watch, which I still inexplicably found myself watching this week, including a match which I'm pretty sure you would never watch. No, none of our patrons would watch, but I inexplicably sat through and lost 15 minutes of my life. But I'll save that to the very end of the show. Okay. Because I just wondered why I did that. I haven't even put it down on the sheet just to keep it as a weird surprise, which the only question you'll have is why? Why did you do that? You don't have the time for this stuff. Why did you do it? And you're like, I don't have a good answer. So
well, on that note, speaking of wacky stuff that you added to the sheet last minute, I did move it up. If we are talking about the Samoans, and we are talking about Jey Uso, I mean, I feel like the easiest way to ease our way into this, and I couldn't believe this when you threw it on the sheet. What's this Jey Uso and Chelsea stuff that's going on today? Like, what is happening? Like, is that should that be our lead news story and not New Japan? I know it's like I say, it'll be AEW Light with obviously Blood and Guts taking place later tonight, but we are going to be covering a few things. Bit of New Japan in there, bit of workers' rights to talk about, bit of WWE, bit of big indies conversation to have today, JP. But I don't know, I feel like this has jumped right to the front of the sheet.
Do you know what? When I saw this appear, I saw this it was like Jey Uso appears in, as according to WrestleTalk TV, Jey Uso appears in Chelsea FC's Magic of Blue Christmas advert. Now I'm frightened of pressing play on it, just simply because there'll be some sort of like copyright nightmare that happens. But he does inexplicably make an appearance. I'm going to try and share. If you go to like 25 seconds in, like, he does make like the slightest of appearances for something that I thought initially this was like an advert just promoting Chelsea over Christmas and trying to flog stuff from their store and everything else. There he is, just appears in a phone holding a Chelsea WWE title, which he never will again.
They've got to flog them things, haven't they?
Exactly. And then it becomes this advert. You think, you just think, it's this little girl. She wants to play for Chelsea women, who are the most successful and like the best of the women's teams in the WSL. Women's. But no, that was maddeningly inconsistent. Just ask Jordan that one. But they are like. But then it just becomes this quite dark advert where one of the characters, his wife has died, and he sat there alone in front of the TV. And then all the neighbours pop round. It becomes an advert about loneliness. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, where did this get, like, this took a dark turn, didn't it? Jey Uso is nowhere to be seen at this point. He should have knocked round there for Christmas and done this fella is Christmas tea and whatnot. But it's it's an advert about loneliness at Christmas, which that's
how can you be lonely, JP, when you've got tens of thousands of people eating along with you? I don't know if that's the weirdest collaboration of like this week, in that like we just did the rap business, didn't we, which was about rappers and wrestling and wrestlers and rappers. Do we need to do like the football business where it's about footballers and wrestling and wrestlers in football? You know, Shawn Michaels being a big fan of the West Ham United, I think it was. The Blackburn Rovers, he was a big fan of back in the day. And like this popped up as well. You're throwing him Michael Owen dressing up as Terry for his daughter's birthday apparently this week. This was on the Daily Mail website, so I decided to go on there. WF Old School on Facebook instead. What the fuck is going on? Like, is he just getting the news now about Terry? Has he been getting the AI memes like you, mate? Has it been coming through?
Well, I was kind of hoping, as much as anything else, that Michael Owen might have I don't know, watched. I'm trying to think of what massive player he played with in physically big that he would have played with, who he watched taking filling up a bar full of shit. Because maybe that would have been the case. Like, I don't know, someone at Real Madrid, Luis Figo or someone when he was back there. But yeah, there he is at his daughter's. I mean, that's his wife.
Terrible Terry, by the way.
With him,
my Terry was
terrible. Your Terry was much better than this.
Yeah,
this one.
At least it's on the internet now, obviously for obvious reasons. But it was good back in the day. Yeah, more than 10 years ago. Just saying.
And he can afford to go big on a proper Terry costume, not this one, which feels lazy as fuck. And I very much he does strike me as the kind of fella, though, who would be into like sort of Hulkamania and believe it's all real. He does that show with Howard Webb on Mike Tupp.
Oh, the referee thing.
On VAR. Yeah, so you know he goes along with what is the sort of status quo, majority opinion and stuff like that. Like he's that kind of a bloke, isn't he? He'd believe middle of the road from WWE. Oh, completely middle of the road, that bloke. He's
worst insult I ever got when I did my first ever podcast with Martin back on what was it called, the Wrestling Catchcast or whatever it is. One of my mates said, "Yeah, it sounded good. You sounded good, but you're putting your posh scouse voice on. You sounded like Michael Owen." And from that day since, I've tried not to do that. But I was going to say, he does look like just a lad on a stag too, doesn't he? Dressed as Hogan here. Are there other wrestling and footy crossovers we could do? We could fit into this 5-to-1 tier list. Like it's more that, isn't it? It's more stuff like Shawn Michaels appearing on Sky Sports News and ones like that you can kind of. I guess there's Fulham. That's always obvious, isn't it, with Tony? And Everton beating them this weekend. I felt bad for Tony, but got to do what you got to do. We needed those 3 points, so it is what it is. But there's a few of them there.
Wayne Rooney was it? He was at one of the shows, wasn't it? Well, of course, Vinnie Jones.
Yeah,
he made an appearance.
Of course we covered that.
Yeah, Darren Fletcher was apparently like a massive hardcore wrestling fan.
I remember seeing him having a piss at the MEN once at a wrestling show. I didn't say anything to him. I left him alone. But a few fellas bothered him. I think they were City supporters. Ah, well.
That's it, you see. You'd sort of look at him and go, like, he didn't really... the kind of bloke, whether or not is he going to be, like, I don't know, reading Meltzer and stuff like that. Maybe he could be that kind of a lad. That wouldn't be like it's a strange one. I wouldn't have expected Darren Ferguson. Gianfranco Zola? You remember he appears, what is it, Chris Tarrant,
and Sami Zayn is Newcastle fans. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
in the chat.
But that was good because they weren't looking for the attention. They were just a couple of blokes photographed in the crowd who were just going along. Was it a Monday night game or something like that, wasn't it? Yeah, and he went along for it. And I just thought it's pretty hardcore. Like I don't mind, like for Sami Zayn in particular, but I think as we've spoken about before, his family appear to be like quite big like football fans, and they appear to know their stuff. I could say that. From there.
Yeah,
you can.
Experience. Yep.
You've had that experience. Did you? Well, you wouldn't have known at the time. It would have been good for you to come and go, is your brother into this stuff at all? And he's like, oh yeah, he's watching the EFL Championship highlights on Quest or something like that.
Close. And I've seen Kneecap do an Instagram post. You always see Sami Zayn give it a like. He's got his he's tuned in into aspects of culture.
Good man.
It is what it is. Tim Bison to do the PC. Yeah, we never had like a proper football player make it as a wrestler though. He's the closest. I can't think of anybody else. I always used to love. Like I remember getting like a Shoot magazine when I was a kid, and there was an interview with Peter Schmeichel, and they asked him what his first job was, and he said his first job was selling WWF tickets, and like there was no follow up from the interviewer. And this was in like 1997 or something like that. And I'm guessing, wow, when would his first job be, in the 80s or something like that? With WWF coming to Europe in the 80s, I guess they were coming to the UK, so maybe they went broader out into Denmark, but maybe he was over here being a ticket tout or something like that. I always want to follow up on that. I want to know what's Michael's connection to wrestling. It's one of those mysteries, JP. I need solving.
Yeah, more questions than answers on this sorts of stuff. I mean, Ewan says that about several British wrestlers who are massive Arsenal fans. There's a good few British. Of them. No, there's a good few of them. Yeah, oh god, yeah. You always hear Excalibur. Like he threw in lines about Harry Wilson scoring 2 goals for Fulham in one of the games. One of those perpetual FPL draft players going, should I pick him up? He won't do anything for 6 games, but maybe that one game you pick him up for, he'll do something. But he's very much, if you're desperate and near the bottom of the table, you just get him in. Like you just hope for the best. But it should be much more of a crossover, because it's Grant Hall. Yeah, we watched that, didn't we?
We did. We covered it. Yeah, it looked good.
When they did like a
Keen and AEW
of
good.
Carrow Road.
God. Wasn't a great place for wrestling, but they made it look good. Yeah, Okada's a City fan. Okay, there you go. There's a tie-in that works. I think I've seen him in a City shirt, to be fair, and he will be a Glory Hunter, so it works.
Yeah, exactly. He would be. Well, Shotaro Ashino from All Japan, who was every time he would do when I was on Instagram, he'd do an Instagram live chat. And I just appear and start asking him questions about what was it? Asking
That's
questions
about
like old Arsenal players. He named one of his moves after Nigel Winterburn. He does a lot of suplexes like Taz. And that was just like absolutely insane in here. I mean, Ewan's post here about there was a gimmick at a Greg Burridge promotion once with a heel stable who represented a fake football club called Evanley United. Members included David Reckham and Harry Payne. Fair enough. There's been a few of them. Reynaldo
in the Northwest, he did like a footy gimmick. Jiggy Walker, Matty's cousin, was pretty much a footy gimmick. There's tie-ins there. They do work. Excalibur, being put the quotes in from the Football Cliches podcast. That's it. That's what he loves. Chris is right. Apparently, Ian Riccaboni's a Charlton fan. All right, that's a weird one. You'd think they'd just be prescribed to be Fulham fans, like Orange Cassidy and Darby Allin looking miserable in the stands with Tony,
Yeah, exactly. Whereas, I remember when we went to North, me and Matty spoke to Zach Gibson about Liverpool for quite a bit, and he was he clearly just wants, that's the thing that he loves more than anything else. Oh, he does.
I don't know. No? I mean, it's a gimmick. I don't know. Who am I to say that a man from McGill might be lying about his Liverpool ties, JP? Who could possibly say?
I can believe he's a Liverpool fan. I could believe that side of it. The accent.
So are a lot of people.
Feel like he's playing it up, but yeah.
Believe me, so are a lot of people. Being in Thailand, so are a fucking lot of people.
But it's that kind of hyping things. If you're going to play a heel in a territory, all you need to do. They did it even here for one of those. What was it? Welsh wrestling shows that I went along to with Joe, and there was the heels were from Swindon because they were in Oxford. And that's a manufactured rivalry, I might add. But
that's proper
local. Yeah. And it was just good work, because there were people there in Oxford United shirts that just played and then gone to the show. And I loved it. I was like, good lads. Well, that's exactly the kind of shit you should be doing.
I'll close the football chat, but I always remember you've reminded me there, because I literally got a pop-up today on Facebook saying, I actually also got the other day that it's 8 years since Sabu and Bootle, not football related, but a great memory in my life. But apparently it's also, I think it was maybe 9 years since D'Lo Brown came to Liverpool to work Zach Gibson. He worked Sam Bailey at Zach Gibson's promotion, Infinite Promotions in Liverpool. And we were chatting. There's loads of pictures of me afterwards, after the show. That was back in the day when Matty didn't come to indie promotions. So I was there with his cousin Gary and a few of my other mates. And we were chatting to D'Lo, and he was like, yeah. My wage was literally, because he came on the day Liverpool played Chelsea, I think it was. And literally his wage for the day, he didn't get paid by Infinite Promotions. They got him a ticket and they got him a stadium tour to go and watch Liverpool. And he came over for the booking and did the show, and it's all right, D'Lo's the one who's a proper Liverpool fan. I'm willing to let that one slide for an out of town Liverpool supporter. He made it part of his booking fee. I think that passes the smell test there.
But he's not the most hipster fan in and around the Liverpool area. You know who that would be, don't you?
Oh, who?
It's our good friend Jeff. and his association with Tranmere Rovers.
Oh, there is that too.
There is that. We won't mention anything else to do with Tranmere Rovers.
Which is the whole reason we went to Tranmere.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything else. That was the reason we ended up going down there. Yeah, Helwani, Forest fan, as Jake says there, yeah. And obviously, the most obvious wrestling football tie-in, as Ewan says there, is Benson Richards being an Everton fan. And yeah, again, Tony Khan should thank his lucky stars. I didn't use the Grapple account this weekend to send him a DM about the results of the weekend. I thought I'd let him lick his wounds while he pays attention to Fulham rather than AEW. But yeah, as Chris says, D'Lo and Bubba are Liverpool fans. MVP's a United fan. I've seen him use that for heat in Liverpool. Eddie Kingson, big Liverpool supporter. I've seen him use that for pops at TNT as well. So fortunately, the Devils Club has a lot of fans there, JP. But anyway, that's it for the side. So there you go. Send us your ones in the comments. Any other wrestling football tie-ins you can have. But maybe we'll put a show together at some point, but we've kind of made it. Hey, my dad says worse. I mean, the Facebook page that I had up there, that literally had to very quickly close. It was just in case any of my dad's or my uncle's posts turned up on Facebook, because the broader public does not need to see them. But anyhow, moving on, we do talk some wrestling stuff as we get there. And we mentioned the card there, JP, obviously being the big City fan. And like I say, we got it in a bit of a loose order this week. Few AEW things to cover, few WWE, few New Japan, and then, like I say, lots going on, it seems like, on the indies this week. But feels like the right place to start, which is Kazuchika Okada turning up at New Japan this weekend that not many people predicted. Obviously, we'd heard reports from Fightful that it was coming soon, the announcement of who Hiroshi Tanahashi's retirement match opponent was gonna be. And yeah, Okada walked out under the very, like in my room and in here, very yellow looking lights out there for this New Japan show at the weekend in Anjo, and obviously got a gigantic pop, got a bit of an emotional reaction from me, to be honest, seeing it when we talked about it on Weekend Show and we debated about doing an Okada match or what the quality of the match might be at Wrestle Kingdom. That just all dissipated for me as soon as I saw him walk out, and I was like, no, that's the match. I mean, there's other matches we can get into that also could have been the match, but you know what? Nah, I think they've nailed this one. I think this is what this is about. Felt like a big moment. We're going to get into some, obviously, ticket sales stuff with Wrestle Kingdom. It does feel like interest is up as a result of it. A couple of other people who, again, might have been in the mix for it as well. But yeah, what was your reaction to seeing Okada walk out here and obviously set himself up with Gedo in tow as well as Hiroshi Tanahashi's opponent for Wrestle Kingdom? I think, like I say, despite maybe some of our misgivings, I don't know if you with me, in that just seeing it in the flesh and just seeing that photo we're looking at there here in the video version, like, just looks and feels right, doesn't it, for a last match? I think that's really what a last match should be.
Yep, you've hit the nail on the head. It should be his last match. It's the perfect opponent, given his career. If you want to think of, just in the simplest terms, who is his greatest ever rivalry with, it's with Kazuchika Okada. And seeing Okada come out with New Japan music, with Gedo doing the spiel in the ring as well, and the way that he did it. And it was...
Forget all the stuff he did to him. Forget all the 10. Forget all that. None of it happened. Been long enough now. Forget Jay White.
Fine. Yeah, let bygones be bygones, and you just sort of like move on past that. But it is the right opponent ultimately in the scheme of things. There are the only three, and we spoke about this when we did the Weekend Show, is that you would have, whether it be Nakamura, there is those kind of issues there as well. Naito that you brought up there on the screen, that in terms of that, but you've got issues around politics. And frankly, about match quality, where like you kind of think to yourself, actually, and it wouldn't surprise me to see Naito make some kind of an appearance on the show as well. And there's bits about Nakamura that we'll talk about in a little bit in there as well. But this is ultimately the right move for what do you want his swan song to be? You want it to be, didn't need to be a great match. They just need to go through some of the old hits of some of the, because it is. We spoke about this when we spoke about like the greatest like feuds ever, and we said that this is the greatest feud in modern New Japan. It was the thing that elevated it to new heights. And while the Kenny Omega matches, you can argue like sort of subjectively, are they better matches? And that's completely, it's completely personal preference. It's this feud that put them on the map, because all of a sudden it was Tanahashi doing the heavy lifting by himself. And then Okada came in. And so it's right. And it's easier for them to do. And if you go for Nakamura, what are you going to end up doing? You're just going to end up pissing off AEW. And that's no good. That doesn't do anyone any favours whatsoever. So you bet it's the safest bet it's the most sensible bet. It appears to be a commercially successful thing to do as well. And also, AEW can tie a lot of this stuff into, what happens with Takeshita versus Yota Tsuji. The big question really here is, does it main event? That's and I think there's a legitimate kind of question for that of does this one main event, seeing as this is the one that appears to be drawing the house, even if you want people to come away talking about potentially Yota Tsuji as being their new guy for the future. And I think, but that's a kind of an issue that we're going to see sort of coming up over the next month. But definitely right move.
Few things to pick up on there. We'll get to the main event stuff in a sec. Like the Naito and Nakamura stuff we flew through as well. Like, I think with Naito, like we talked about it on Weekend Show. Like, again, I don't think the match quality really matters here. I think maybe that probably was part of the conversation we had on Weekend Show, because it was two blokes with no knees and barely any elbows taking each other on. Would that have been a great entertainment? But I think it's the same thing with the Okada match here. Like, the Okada match is probably not going to be great. It's probably not going to be a patch on the previous matches. You'll get glimpses of it. You get glimpses of the play and the hits, and that will be enough. But at the end of the day, it's not going to matter, is it? Like, think of what the staging is in. It does go into that conversation about whether it goes on last or not. Like, just think of what are we all going to remember at the end of the night, and it's going to be Tanahashi in floods of tears, fully retiring and having that one last, air guitar moment, or however they choose to go by it. Like, that's the stuff that's going to matter. And it's almost like, there's the kayfabe stuff with the Okada as well, but the non-kayfabe stuff of, how tied together they are there, and the emotion that comes out of just seeing them two in there as well. Like, I think all of those conversations, and we had one of them last week, I think have maybe been probably the wrong conversation to be having, because as much as it's WrestleKingdom and as much as it's a big match on WrestleKingdom, I can't think of a big match on a WrestleKingdom where match quality doesn't really matter here. I think what matters is the occasion. What matters is all of the emotion surrounding it as well. And dare I say it, when you say those two other names, I think you might have got a bit of that with Naito. He did say in that obviously story we had up there that at one point he had European bookings that he cancelled because he'd had feelers out that maybe they might want him for this last match, so he wants to keep the date free, and then turned out they never called him back. So that's a bit harsh, but I kind of get that, and being like the backup to the backup, he probably wouldn't be your first choice, but he'd be a good choice. Nakamura, I think, would have been just as good with Okada. I don't know if I'll go as far as some are saying that it would be a better choice. I think it would be a bit more left field. It would be more of a surprise. It would be fresher, arguably, obviously, since, Nakamura's been gone a lot longer. The match wouldn't be better. Maybe that doesn't matter. But, it would be a similar occasion to Okada. But I'm quite interested, like saying the story we had there, that like the idea of potentially, that could still happen. Like, they could, and it wouldn't shock me. Like, Noah would have got that show, is it on the 1st of January? Yeah. Like, that it pops up there. There's been certainly some talk about that possibly being the case, and that will be a backdoor way around it. As we all know, Nakamura has worked, Noah a couple of times while he's been under the contract. Apparently, it's in his deal that he can, take bookings like this. Again, whether that deal extends to New Japan, who's a partner of AEW, and whether it's, again, there's been a lot of dark Twitter talking this week about whether that it's WWE blocking Nakamura or it's AEW blocking New Japan. I think the reality is probably all of these elements are true, but more than anything, and we saw it with New Japan and ROH, in the years early on in AEW's like invention, they're loyal to their partners, and ROH was their partner, and that therefore meant they didn't do anything with AEW, as obvious it was for all of us. And I think here, AEW is their partner. Whatever you want to say about whether they're a good partner or a bad partner, they're an important partner to New Japan. And I don't think New Japan would have wanted to push the issue and upset the apple cart and, get a Nakamura on a show that's going to have AEW involvement, especially, with the other big match that's on the show there as well. So a backdoor way into it, like, it sounds like fantasy booking a little way, but it's starting to, NHK Radio, apparently, Tanahashi was talking about this Nakamura match, saying he'd obviously met with Nakamura ahead of the WWE show in Japan, and that they wanted to face each other, but as I say, politics kind of got in the way. Apparently, is a Kakuto log said there's delicate negotiations going on to make it happen for Noah's show. If anybody can make it happen, it's Tanahashi. He is the president at the end of the day. Nakamura has done Noah before, and that might be the best way to get the best of both worlds. You get the last Okada match, and you get the last Nakamura match. Ideally, that would be in New Japan. But if it took place on Noah in Noah in the same week, I think people would take that.
I think they would. I don't think it'd be a one-on-one singles match. I think there might be an element of them doing it as a tag match. And then you've got the interactions there as well. Maybe that's just me. But you mentioned about the president role. I think that's the key thing here. Because you have to remember that there has been a kind like the relationship between Noah and New Japan is stuff that tends to go up and down at various points. They'll do co-promoted shows, but then there's the way they treated Kaito Kiyomiya, just sort of left a really bad taste in the mouth and never seemed to go anywhere. But Hiromu's the GHC junior champion. But obviously, as we're going to talk about later on, there's so much about Noah that is, like, for me, it feels like WWE are kind of thinking to themselves, if there's a promotion they can pick up and use as their, like, sort of Japan outpost, it would be a Noah. However, for Tanahashi, like, it kind of makes good business sense for him to appear there. Now, he did make an appearance in it as part of a tag team match with him and Kiyomiya teaming up. And that wasn't, when was that? That might have been in...
Wasn't that long ago, was it?
Early October. No, it was, I want to say it was early October. Early October, maybe late September. And, you know, the idea of him making an appearance there, I mean, who's going to have a problem with it in New Japan? There's not really anything anybody else can do. But Noah would probably appreciate the boost because while Nakamura would shift a certain amount of tickets, Nakamura on the other side of the ring from Tanahashi definitely would shift a good few tickets. There would definitely be a few like New Japan fans who'd probably feel like coming along for a show like that as well. So I don't think Noah would be saying, would be fools to say sort of no to this. It feels like it's the politically expedient thing to do. Now, the third thing they could do, I mean, is obviously you can work in a way of Naito making an appearance at the Dome in some sort of post-match capacity or something along those lines. That would also be kind of nice if they were able to do something like that along the way. But
everyone being grown-ups, imagine it, to get something like that done.
Yeah. Which I have to say, in Japan, that's become more and more of a thing. That does feel like that there is that element because nobody's doing really well. So it makes sense to try and make as many agreements just to try and, you know, rising tide lifts all ships and all that. Yeah. So I could see it happening, and I think it probably would. I think it would happen. I think if it's a tag match, if it's a singles match as well, if he's going all out at the Dome only 3 days later, given the condition of what he's in, a tag match as just a kind of like celebratory thing would probably be a good way to go. Like, just give Tanahashi a young lion on his team who can eat the pinfall, have them do their various poses, and then just sort of move on from there. But you've had that kind of moment. Make sure you've got permission. New Japan have got the permission to kind of use the footage of that on their shows as well, and everybody's happy on that front.
Yeah, and like you say, you know, when it comes to the money drawing aspect of this, like, very clearly it's a draw. You know, we don't know the exact details on it yet as far as numbers go. We just know tickets are selling well, again, coming from the NJ Kikitaru account there on Twitter, saying apparently tickets are selling at incredible pace, and if the remaining few standing seats are gone, the final outfield seats, so the further away ones, will then be released. And then that feels like a bold statement to say the Tokyo Dome is going to be sold out, but it might be trending that way. I don't want to go that far yet until we see some seat maps and we see some actual numbers. But clearly, you know, Okada coming back to New Japan has been a draw, as well as Tanahashi coming back. Having his last match has been a draw, and that has begged the conversation, as you alluded to there, as to, I guess this is really the main event, and they're using it obviously as part of the story, aren't they? That presser that Tanahashi and Okada did, where Okada said, that was the last New Japan Okada you're going to see. You're going to see the AEW Okada, so expect a 3.5-star match coming up at the Dome. But he did also throw a few pelters in about potentially doing a vote or something like that to figure out what's going to be the main event, and obviously whether Takeshita and Yota Tsuji can follow them, throwing him some work shooter comments about that. But there might be a shoot conversation for it as well if it is the draw, and if it is the reason a lot of people are coming the Dome. They're going to be tempted to put it on last. I mean, I can't. Can you? It's funny, because this has been a big conversation, and I think, if Yota Tsuji is beating Takeshita, do you not want to put that on last and, show your future to an audience that are there to see your past? I get that argument, but I can't. I've never pictured this Wrestle Kingdom going off the air and ending without Tanahashi being the one in the ring doing the air guitar. And, again, people might argue it's Yota Tsuji should be the last face you see. feel like it feels more in line with how New Japan would book things, and maybe, dare I say, what the crowd going to the Dome would expect for Tanahashi to go on last year. I'm surprised that, like, yeah, maybe there's as much conversation about it as there is, but I don't know how you feel on it.
My natural instinct is to say close the show with Tanahashi.
Yeah,
I know that flies in the face of everything that I've said about what New Japan should be doing over the last, 6 years or so. But like you say, what do you want your final image to be? You kind of want it to be Tanahashi in the ring, like you said. Now, do you want him to do a thing where he calls Yota Tsuji up the aisle as well? But this is sort of so special. He's like the significant, without, I'm not going to go into the details of it, but Tanahashi carried that company from nowhere. They were like dying. They were dying. And he sort of, like, I'm saying single-handedly, but certainly in ring, was the guy who kind of managed to get that interest back in, and then Okada kind of leading it on. So the degree of importance for this, and that crowd is going to be a crowd that want to see Tanahashi. And having him main event at Tokyo, you don't do this for everyone, but for Tanahashi, I think you can make the exception. I think you could do a thing where maybe at the end of it, he calls out Yota Tsuji to sort of
and then
pass,
he comes out.
Yeah. Like passes it on, like I'm passing New Japan.
That would be a
on to
solution.
you now.
I'll be all right with that. Yeah,
that would. I think we'd all be happy with that. But I think you go with the sentiment, and it's also the fact that it's going to be on mainstream Japanese TV. I think at a reasonable time, not a 2 a.m. job. TV Asahi going to want Tanahashi on there? Probably. That's going to be the draw for them from a ratings perspective. That they're going to have to think about that, and so this is the match that's bringing people in. You should go with it. If you think about, say, I don't know, Kenta Kobashi's retirement match, that was a multi-person tag at a sold-out Budokan. Like, there were other matches that were probably more important within the sort of where Noah were at that point in time. But you finish on that match. That's the match you want people thinking about. Why? Because they're going to throw streamers into the ring. You're going to want the ceremony. You don't want to cut that short because you've now got this other match. And that other match, what is it going to come out to? It could come out to a really burnt out crowd who are emotionally drained after watching arguably the greatest wrestler in New Japan history, like retiring. That's the thing that makes the most sense for me. So, like, I look at that and I think that's the way I would go, with you, as you finish with Tanahashi.
And it's selling itself at this point, the Dome. Like, the card, I know you've got it here as well, JP. Like, it is looking strong. It's looking, I mean, we had the match today that did make me scratch my head a little bit, but like, you go again, whatever we think about what should go on last, I think it's going to be a huge positive. And again, it's Gedo booking in 2025/2026, so nothing is, promised. But if this is Yota Tsuji's big moment and he is going over to cash there, you want it to be on this card. You want it to be in front of all these people, and it feels like obviously giving it that extra importance that Wrestle Kingdom always deserves.
And the rest of the card, I mean, if you're going to structure it, it really should be sort of like new generation, New Japan, young lions becoming stars. Like, that should really be the theme for the rest of the show.
And Aaron Wolf.
And trying to...
They put a lot of money behind him. I've seen a lot of people saying that.
And Aaron Wolf.
I've seen a lot of people putting that over. Like, honestly, I've got to say, like, again, I joke about being the New Japan whisperer now. I've got me lovely polo top. And I've been to Korakuen. I don't know if I mentioned I've been to Korakuen, JP. I was also inside the Tokyo Dome on the same week. It was fantastic stuff. But the thing about being there was you could feel it, like, between the matches, before the matches, after the matches. Aaron Wolf everywhere. It was like they've got this big fish and they really want to push it. They put a lot of money behind it. They put a lot of investment behind it. They're hoping he's going to be a Chad Gable rather than a Gable Stevenson, I think, when it comes to actually performing in the ring. But, like, they're putting a lot behind this. And obviously, you said there, the TV Asahi thing for Wrestle Kingdom as well as a gigantic factor too. They're going to be hoping that, again, he's bringing some people in. And also, with these eyeballs on, he's going to deliver too.
Yeah. I mean, with him and his match, I think I said this before, like, you do the bells and whistles. That's why Evil is there. Keep it short. Give him, like, some big moments. Put the Never title on him. Like, just go with it. Like, that's the only sensible option to do there as well. And again, give people a big crowd pleasing moment, which, God, I sound like Vince Russo talking about USA Today. Would imagine you'd get that mainstream coverage, which is the thing that they kind of need to do. They really need to get that attention. It's just that he's got the athletic credibility as opposed to David Arquette. So, like, you've got to go down that route. But then for me, it's things like, you know, whoever the Knockout brothers face at the like, I would have them against Yuya Uemura and Shota Umino. It's just like, go out and have the match that you did last time. Just go out there and do this at the Dome. Like, just make sure that you're building stuff up. That's why when I see the junior 4-way for a number one contendership match, I'm just like, well, this does not fit in there at all. I mean, even the women's match, Saya Kamitani Shuri, like, that's a big match within sort of like Joshi circles. So you're giving it the best possible kind of exposure by putting it on a show like this. It's kind of like that's what this card has to be. They're never going to get this opportunity again. They're not going to draw this crowd next year. But what they can hope to do is retain as much of this crowd as they possibly can do. And that means putting your best foot forward. Like, if you think about Noah when they did 30,000 for the Muto show, it had no impact on everything else because everything else on the card was kind of pretty meh. It wasn't like this was an outstanding show and then you had Muto's retirement. Here, I think there is an element where the rest of the show has to have a certain degree of quality to it, and they can't fuck around on this because they had so many opportunities. They've burnt so many people away that they need to show, like, no, actually, we've moved on. And when with Tanahashi gone, there is that kind of symbolic element of, like, we're moving past that generation into the future, and it feels too perfect for them to then not do it.
And maybe it's also New Japan over the last 5 years. So, like, this is the best opportunity they've had, though, you know, in the last 5 years to actually, you know, take some positive momentum, because it's pretty much been nothing but negative momentum for a few years here, and like take something and do something with it. So again, not just me being New Japan Benno now, meaning that's the lead story, just in general, it's a gigantic, you know, opportunity for New Japan going into next year. So obviously we're talking more about it today as it comes up. But yeah, Jamesy did joke on the Discord, will I be doing me Greg's run? Not during any of the top two matches, but there's already like I say, the whatever that 4-way is. That might be the Greg's run for Benno coming up as well. But you know, other the rest of it's good. I think I'll be sat in my chair whatever country I'm in that month, JP. But moving on from there, we did decide to lead with that because we couldn't lead with the stories that have been dominating wrestling discourse this week. As our friend over obviously at What Culture said, that, you know, we've got to say here, you know, as far as like Cedric said, you know, the lead stories in wrestling in 2025 apparently involve, I guess at this point, Ridge Holland and the status and the politics behind Nixon Newell refusing to do a job in AEW. But such is the you know, the news cycle, JP. I heard you mention it a little bit on the news dump this week on the Patreon, but it has dominated things and it has been a big part of conversation. So we do need to talk the latest on this AEW gate between Nixon Newell and Miranda, Alize, and obviously there's been conflicting reports through the week because, you know, those dirty dirt sheets, JP, what they do is they lie. And I feel like, for me, this was like the record attempt for you know, wrestlers coming out and going, the dirt sheets are full of lies. Everything they said to you is nonsense. Wait till you hear our side of the story, only to be pushed into giving their side of the story on Twitch, and it turning out that their side of the story was pretty much the story that was reported in the dirty dirt sheets, and they really didn't have any real leg to stand on here. It's a bizarre story, but obviously if you have been living under the rock, you know, Nixon Newell and Miranda Alize, who were in the women's tag tournament, we're booked to lose to Tymello and Anna Jay this weekend on Collision, and weren't happy with that. Depending on which part of it you believe, obviously on the Twitch stream, they talked about not liking the fact that they were, you know, losing again after losing the debut match in the tournament, but more to the point, only getting 3 minutes or whatever the time was there. Obviously, since then, a bit of footage has come out of their match in the opening round of the AEW Tag Team Tournament, and made it look a little bit like they weren't necessarily cooperating. There's been various people in and around AEW coming out saying they weren't particularly happy with how they performed in that match. Apparently, Bryan Danielson is being quoted as saying that the match didn't quite go the way that AEW expected. Again, for their part, Nixon and Alize have obviously talked on the Twitch stream about how everything was fine. Nobody was mad at us. We were just given the option to leave if we wanted, and we took it. And again, the reporting coming out that sounds like that's one of those things people say, and then they expect you to go, oh no, I'll stay. We'll work it out and we'll do the job because we are, after all, just enhancement talent. And no, they took the opportunity and they left. They thought there was no issue. No bad blood on either side is the quote, allegedly. But it seems from the slew of reporting we've had from multiple sources, JB, bad blood definitely exists on this one, and this, I don't know, feels a bit like a mountain out of a molehill, but like it's the story that will not go away, and it's probably the fact that both sides have been so chatty over the last few days.
It is. You're right. It's a mountain out of a molehill. It's something that shouldn't be a story. Couple of effectively, let's call them what they are, enhancement talents. Not particularly happy about it. Leave early, replaced by another couple of wrestlers who are happy to take up that role in the proviso that they're going to get future shots within AEW. And that's the other thing that's come out of this, is that Maya World and Hyan, who we obviously has done extended tours over in the UK as well, seen her in Rev Pro a few times, are being given that kind of shot. And now this might only result in some sort of Ring of Honor bookings for them, but good for them. This story is, I mean, because I saw that match at the time on Collision, the Marina Shafir and Megan Bain, and it really comes
back
back
to the Megan
that
Bain spot everyone was pointing out, why they like it was a double German.
The double German in that as well, and it looked kind of like messy. They weren't exactly trying to leap off their feet to go back and land and make a kind of look good in there. But I come back to on this is like they are no loss whatsoever. I don't think about Nixon Newell. It doesn't appear, by all accounts, I've only got 1 year left anyway. So it's like, well, why did you go?
That was weird.
Like, why did you go? If you're retiring, like, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to have like what, a few bookings, and then you're going to retire anyway. It's like they're not going to pick. Miranda Alize is someone who's never like I've ever come across, and I'm not ever going to kind of like worry about never having seen her again. She's not that great. I think Nixon Newell, I mean, the thing to think about is even when she was kind of at a peak over here in BritWres, she was part of a cast of characters, wasn't she, who were doing the rounds for your Fight Club pros and your progresses and doing and Attack and doing those shows and doing those dates at the time when there was like a scene that was really developing. So she would be, 4 or 5 times a week working throughout the country. That feels like a hell of a long time ago. As Tegan Knox, she was just injured all the time. Didn't mean anything in the scheme of things. Maybe that's
which isn't her fault,
misremembering.
She was, but when they had it and when the opportunity, they didn't do enough for that. Obviously, yes, Celavi, that could be the title for this one as what's in there. I mean, I wouldn't want to undercut her too much, though. She was part of a collection of stars in BritWres at the time, but she was an over part of it and was an important part of it. And people do fondly remember those matches and do remember, obviously, the Chris Brooks stuff was probably the thing most people go to. But her in Progress and seeing her in a Fight Club Pro and such, like I think she was an important part of it, at least on the women's side. She is somebody that I don't think WWE ever got the most out of, especially considering. They ran fucking Cardiff, like that right there. Like was the opportunity there as well. She is someone who, when she left WWE, it has been strange to see that, she hasn't really been picked up anywhere. Again, maybe some of the bad judgment we're maybe seeing on offer here is part of that. But, I wouldn't want to undercut it too much. And I kind of feel like to push back a little bit on the general narrative here. You know me, I want wrestlers to do this. Like I think wrestlers should pick their battles, but I would prefer that wrestlers stand up for themselves, that wrestlers have, some form of value attached to themselves. You don't want to go full Loki. You also don't necessarily, if you're not Bret Hart, want to go full Bret Hart, but you want to take this stuff seriously and you want it to matter. And if their version of events is true, it sounds like, it mattered to them and they cared about their book. And I think that's good. I think where it falls down, any defense of one amount of them, is that, again, you pick your moments, don't you? When you're in as essentially unsigned enhancement talent, you might not like it, but you kind of have to think about, well, let's read the room here. if I don't do this, what happens? If we do walk out, if we do take the offer to walk away and put another team in this spot, who, by all accounts, what was the team that replaced them in the end? It was Hyan, wasn't it?
Hyan and Maya World.
They stepped in, and their reputation is, I always think of Jeff Jarrett when I hear that name, but like their reputation has obviously gone up as a result of it, and it kind of shows you that maybe you need to play the game sometimes. It's that, isn't it? It's the judgment of like, was it worth it, considering, like you say, Nixon's saying she's retiring a year. Was it worth it, considering Nixon's also saying she's not really getting booked anywhere? In the circumstances, you probably take your lumps, even if overall I want more of this in wrestling. I'm not Tony Khan. I don't run the wrestling company. I think the wrestlers should cause a bit of more of a fuss when it comes to their booking. Again, still the conversation to be had about how Tony Khan manages that, and we see that, Swerve, I'm shocked it hasn't been picked up, but in response to this story, Swerve replied to a story about, somebody posted something about, well, not the only person who used to be at work in WWE refuses to lose, and it's a big picture of Lashley, and he replied with like a clapping emoji, like he's admitting that's what happened with him and Lashley in the year. Again, those examples are good examples of the wrestler standing up for themselves, but example of where the company, needs to step in. I think both of those things can be true. You can criticize the company for managing those things while kind of half wanting that to be the thing in wrestling. I think that's the delicate balance here. But with all that said, like I keep saying, you got to pick your battles, and maybe they didn't pick them very well here. And again, like the story we're about to talk about, the more they talk and the more that comes out, the more even people like me who are maybe a little bit more sympathetic to their side, you kind of lose us too.
Well, you see, that's it. But there's a lack of clarity of what are they going to do with them when they bring them in. Like, if you say to them, look, we're going to bring you in, effectively, you're going to have a series of tryouts. These are going to be quite short matches. The idea is to go out there and just sort of see how you mesh, see how you fit in backstage and things like that. If there was that kind of clarity backstage, then what they've done, like, it's very hard for them to necessarily defend. If, on the other hand, this is stuff where they've been sort of promised other things and they've gone in another direction, then like I find it very, very hard for them to like, you can see where their grievances could come from. The problem is there's other reports of this going on there was another story about Nixon Newell leaving halfway through a show and things like that. And it becomes a case of like, is that what this is? Is there like a series of like, it's never their fault, it's always kind of someone else or something else, and there's that teacher mode in me. Yeah, like the kid who's naughty, who says they will do. The kid who's naughty, but it's never their fault, and there's always someone else's fault, and there's always another excuse in there as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's as simple as this: it's like, given the money she's wanting, I think for Indie Days is like $10,000. You're not going to get $10,000 worth of fans off a Nixon Newell. So why would you go down this route? They're probably going to be viewed as like, are they just too much grief? Is there just too much grief getting them involved in there at this stage? They don't seem particularly interested.
Like, that's the thing, innit? That's just looking from the outside, innit? We could be wrong, but you watch that Twitch stream and you watch those clips and it's like, I don't think you really care at the end of the day. I think it's more that. It might actually be the opposite of what I'm saying. I want wrestlers to care about the wins and losses and the positions on shows. I don't think they really care. And I think that's maybe where this has come from, that they're not necessarily that arse. So maybe there's that element to it as well. But yeah, there we go. Other than new 3-minute warning, Chris Elliott says there, it could be that. And yeah, Isaiah Platt says there, yeah. At the end of the day, if you're retiring a year, why would you give a fuck? Anyway, if you're losing as Molly joins proceedings, but we'll get Molly's thoughts on the other workers' rights story here. JP,
what do you think about these workers' rights things, Molly? What do you reckon? Off she stares off. Well, she has got opinions on this as well. For this, this is just because Vicky's having to run off for 10 minutes and Molly's still awake at this stage. I'm just going to be holding fire. So apologies if you do hear a baby talking during this. We'll do our best to mute if you can't, JP. But
we'll go into the other workers' rights story, which is obviously this Ridge Holland mess, who's the other, like I say, to quote Sidge, the other main character of the week. He's another one where like, just shut up, mate. I think the more he's talked, the less I'm sympathetic to him as well. Again, we've talked about the story. It's disgusting. He got injured on WWE's dime doing a show for WWE, whether it was TNA or not. And at the end of the day, like, WWE will, extend people's contracts when it benefits them. They should have extended his contract in this circumstance, whether they're paying for his surgery or not. It's just the right thing to do and just an easy PR win that they don't seem to want. And obviously, as we talked about on Weekend Show, them kicking him out the door a few days early didn't make WWE look good either. But he's not been great this week because obviously the GoFundMe was set up. That was apparently a family member that set it up for him, and he's now saying that no, I didn't want that set up. Obviously, he's talked about talk back some of his communication issues with WWE when he was on Busted Open on Monday, saying that he regrets some of the tweets that he thanks Molly, as he regrets some of the tweets that he put out through the week, and that it wasn't up to him. He didn't necessarily want the GoFundMe. His words were then taken to mean that, okay, he was going to give all the money back from the GoFundMe. He then clarified that even further by saying, no, I'm going to take the money from the GoFundMe, but I'm going to match it in donation to charity once I'm back on my feet, which, again, is a reasonable thing to do, but seems a bit defensive and seems a bit inconsistent with the things he'd said before. And at the end of the day, like the Nixon Newell story, I think he maybe just needs to keep his mouth shut. And if anything, this donation, this GoFundMe being set up was a nice thing that was done. Lots of named wrestlers donated to it. It was a solution to a problem that shouldn't be there in the first place, but it felt like it resolved the issue, and God bless everybody who put their hand in the pocket. I think it's kind of a bit of a slap in the face to them for him to be flip-flopping on what he's actually going to do with the money and when he wants to GoFundMe or not. He should have just said thanks, shut his mouth, and went away for a few months. And I guess he's got a lot of spare time in his hands, JP, and, a phone call from Bully Ray is one you can't turn down, but yeah, the more he talks, the less sympathy he's getting in public discourse here.
I think so. I mean, it's such a. I spoke about this briefly on the news. I feel very confused by all of this. Like, I can't quite understand. It's just like, okay, they've set up the GoFundMe. Kind of take the GoFundMe money. That's like perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And like, if you at some point when you are back on your feet, the idea of giving the money back, if you feel so inclined to say, look, a lot of people supported me, this is what I'm going to do in the future, that's right, Molly, then that's definitely like, that's a way to go. But I don't like it feels like it's very muddled after. It's like I don't know, there's an element of pride that seems to be really coming through on this, that he doesn't want that help and that support, and that's something that really, frankly, he could do with at this stage, given the family situation.
He sounds like somebody who's had a rough week, and we'll give him sympathy for that. That maybe he's talked out of turn, he's sent some tweets he regrets, or he's maybe not necessarily dealt with all of the spotlight in the best way. But yeah, I just kind of think keeping his mouth shut and moving on and taking the money is probably for the best for all involved. Maybe he's also thinking, I am burning my bridges. Maybe I do need to think about my future, and maybe I do need to walk back some of my criticism of WWE as well. But yeah, that's kind of my takeaway on it. And yeah, he's been it was Raj Giri, wasn't it, that was having a go at him, as Simon says there.
That bloke.
Probably not the man to listen to on Twitter. So there we go. But that's that situation as it stands. And again, doesn't change the fact that it's a horrible situation and he shouldn't be in the situation in the first place. Don't get me wrong, TKO are the bad guys here, and that shouldn't necessarily be forgotten here. But moving on from the Ridge Holland story, we should talk some other stuff going on around the wrestling world. We've got some AEW ticket updates to get into, as well as some individual AEW wrestlers who are doing some stuff outside of the AEW universe going on right now. And the world could probably do with them, JP, as it sounds like indie wrestling is dead at this point, based on the news stories we've had over the last few days. Obviously, we'd already heard a little while ago that Prestige Wrestling was closing down, and their next 4 events were going to be their final 4 events. And obviously, they just had one in Roseland in October, then they're in Portland, LA, and then one more in Portland, and they're done, which was horrendous news for people like Gareth, who would follow along Prestige very closely. And that's been followed up, JP, by this news that Deadlock Pro Wrestling have announced a final event for what they've said is the foreseeable future, being their 4th anniversary show. And yeah, this is on December the 12th coming up. Obviously, they're selling tickets only for $1, which is great to hear. They're taking food donations, obviously, for a local food bank there, which is great stuff. But yeah, they thanked the fans for the past 4 years and said thank you to the wrestlers and everyone behind the scenes, and we'll see what comes next. And that's another notable promotion this WrestleMania weekend this year. There weren't many great shows going on Mania weekend. There wasn't much to kind of sink your teeth into. But between these two and West Coast Pro, that was the stuff we were talking about. They are the indies that do get a bit of attention these days. And yeah, you combine that with this story that's come out about Eddie Kingston saying he's on his last indie run at this point, and he's going to be only taking 1 indie booking a month for the rest of the year, and then he's going to move on. A few Beyond dates is what Eddie has got in there as well. And you do see various AEW talent going out to the indies, but we're seeing less and less of that. And we're an ecosystem where there's not even a guaranteed WrestleMania next year for all of these indies to recoup the money. Maybe that's part of the decision making here. There's been a lot of talk about that, and whether again AEW will save the day and run a big weekend coming up for Mania weekend. But future doesn't look bright for the US indies right now, JP, and it's bad story after bad story right now.
It is, isn't it? I mean, like I spoke about it on the news dump. You had 4 major sort of US indies that have kind of like in a really desperate state of affairs. And I know West Coast Pro have decided to move all their stuff effectively off the paywall, just to put it out onto YouTube free. Yeah, just to try and I think that's just to try as a lost leader almost, just to try and get people in the door. It's very sad because looking at Deadlock had like some decent production values about them as well. And it's not like say a Wrestling Revolver, which have got like a Moxley who's earning big money in AEW, who's able to kind of do some stuff for in there as well. Like I think for this, they never recovered from COVID. Yeah, they've the fact of like any available like indie talent has been pretty much hoovered up by, well, if it's not AEW, it's going to be TNA, and if it's not, you know, and the various other kind of promotions around there as well. So there isn't that kind of like reliability, and I think there's just. And in some ways, this ties in weirdly with me watching the sort of Dragon's Den bit on North, because really, once you got past the whole sort of Rory Coyle, and Man Like DeReiss doing a kind of like faux 1 minute match. Like afterwards, it was about like the economics of wrestling, and it was like, well, how are you going to be making money? How much are you making? And then it's just like, right, well, it's just not affordable. And they were just like saying to him, like, it's very honourable what you're doing. Do this as a side hustle, but this isn't something you're going to invest in, because there isn't that. If you think about the ways that they can raise money, they're never going to raise enough through merchandise. They're never going to raise anything through TV. There isn't going to be those kind of big name sponsors who are going to be able to cover it. So really, what can you do outside of try and strip back everything you have and just run a show? Like just like
there's plenty of them. Because it made me laugh that like there's been a lot of those same reactions to me saying Brit Res is dead. That you get like, you know, bumfuck indie in Carolina somewhere being like, well, how can indie wrestling be dead when we still run shows in front of 200 people at our local National Armory and they still love it and they're still rowdy? You internet people don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, yeah, okay, those shows definitely still exist. Local promotion is as important as ever. To be honest, that really feels like that's what Beyond is at this point, rather than something people around the world are actually talking about. But like with Brit Res, what is gone is those indies that really, you know, caught the eye of people further afield than 5 minutes down the road, that caught the eye of people worldwide, which meant talent was seen by people worldwide, and that, you know, word spreads and talent gets booked all over the world. And that's, you know, that was the Brit Res boom. That's also, you know, what a proper super indie does. You know, it's important on the world stage and it's got the world's eyes on it, and it's great to be able to run local shows. It's great that, you know, hand to mouth promotion still takes place, and you know, local promotions can still thrive. That is still a possible thing you see in British wrestling as well. But what we're saying is missing is that cream of the crop level. And what we're saying is seems to be hard to do is to set out your stall to be someone that people, you know, like you say, when money is tight, when you know, every ticket sale counts, when every in the old money DVD sale counts, when every streaming buy counts, you know, it's having a USP that means people who, in a world where WWE are putting 12 hours of telly out and AEW is getting close to that plus pay-per-views, that, you know, people are motivated to want to go and do that. And I think that's kind of the dirty secret, isn't it? As much as we can always joke about WWE killed the Brit Res scene, AEW killed the US indie scene, really, didn't it? Like, I mean, WWE, to an extent, signed up a lot of people and will continue to do it. And WWID, you know, reminds us of many things that happened in Britain. But that USP of being the promotion for the hardcore fan and having the wrestlers that can't make it in WWE, getting to see them, you know, in promotions like that, like a PWG back in the day would do. There isn't really a place for that anymore, because AEW is super saving that type of fan, and then indies are forced to kind of be more creative in a talent pool that's not that deep, because a lot of the talent, as soon as they do get attention, as soon as a Daniel Garcia or a Lee Moriarty starts to get a bit of attention, well, Tony Khan's going to come calling, because he's going to want them on his show. He's going to want them on Collision, which is basically the world's biggest indie show these days, or ROH, or wherever he can put those toys. So
ROH,
that's really a gigantic factor, it feels like here. And yeah, that's, these closures are probably the, you know, the expected follow-on.
And there's going to be more, isn't there? I mean, and unless they're going to run as sort of like de facto places to just send your talent to in order to get some reps in, which in some ways for AEW, we've said this about AEW, you know, in some ways there's a similarity between this and NXT UK, which I know is a desperate thing to say, and it's probably going to rile people.
No, there
up.
is. It's very similar.
But this is the problem overall, is that NXT UK took away multiple tiers, not just the top tier, and you had guys to come in and then take over from it. It took away multiple tiers. And then that's what's happened in the US. And there isn't that talent to come in and take over. And what AEW could do is just think, we've got so many people under contract, and we need to get people in there, and we need to get all of the various kind of tiers in there as well to get the reps in. And if we did that, then at that stage, like, that would be the best thing to do. We're not using, I don't know, like Hyan and Maya World is probably like a really good example of that. Like, if you use them and then you're sending them out and they go, oh, these guys have appeared on Collision, then that would be great. That's the best way of using it. Send the frat house to do this sort of stuff on the
Andy Gould always used to say it, didn't he? He always wants a private party to come over and do Rev Pro. I heard him talk about that on multiple podcasts, and it just didn't happen. You know, there's loads of those kind of stories where it would make sense. Like, and we still do see it. You know, Bro Dido are doing, is it WrestleFest or something coming up? You know, that is an option. Antonio Khan, WrestleCade. Sorry, when you're a good partner, he's willing to do that. But yeah, it's how off. You know, if he needs the talent, you know, they're going to end up taking his show over their show, aren't they, as well? And you know, whether he can be the knight in shining armor for WrestleMania weekend and can possibly, you know, the obviously the high spots people this week were talking about obviously, you know, what are they going to do WrestleMania weekend? And there was some talk about maybe WrestleMania being 2 nights, 1 night in Saudi and 1 in the US. And I think a lot of those guys are maybe hoping that maybe that might be the case. But if it isn't the case, the only solution is going to be hoping that Tony Khan puts something on, and he does use New Orleans for a big AEW weekend the next year, and that's the replacement weekend for the big indie weekend. Because again, without that AEW charity, I think it's going to be a really dull year for the indies in 2026.
Oh God, I hope so. I can't see the Saudis being happy about that at all. If they're going to be paying up to what could be $250 million for WrestleMania,
feels pie in the sky, doesn't it?
Yeah, they want it for them. They're not going to want them to say, oh, and we're going to do a show in the States as well, which would dilute the quality of what they would have on the Saudi show. They would want that as a kind of a standalone thing. If anything, I think the Saudis would want 2 nights out of this. They wouldn't be wanting to have that. That would just be like, that just seems like a step far too far. And if that is the case, and this sort of ties in with the previous conversation we were just saying about the indies, and if Tony Khan can make sort of like some good links with some of the indies as well and say, actually, we've got all of this talent, we're going to spread them across your indie shows, and we're going to be running New Orleans, but in essence, you're going to be helping us promote a big show in New Orleans as well, which seems to be a market that I'm sure they've run there. I don't have a lot of memories about them running New Orleans, so it feels like, you know,
feels like a Tony Khan type of town. I think he'd enjoy putting a big weekender on there. I still think it might happen, and that might be the Hail Mary the Indies one. But I mean, on that note, while we're talking, obviously the Indies and everything going on there, and AEW sending people out to help. I think obviously we haven't really talked about it much here, but one of the reported stories of the year has been what Will Ospreay has been doing with his spare time while he's not been wrestling in AEW. And to be honest, even going back as far as when he was wrestling in AEW, and that is agenting backstage at Eve and helping produce the shows. And it feels like the natural follow-on has been the story that we've also seen this week, which is, again, leveraging Will Ospreay's name. Queendom 8 coming up, JP. Obviously, this has caused some conversation to go on in certain circles. But yeah, WrestleKingdom 8 is going to be on International Women's Day in 2026, which is coming up on the Sunday, the 8th of March. They put a little video out, which did include a lot of Will Ospreay in the first 20 to 30 seconds, I think it is, before you eventually get to the fact that, oh, this is an Eve show and it's about women's wrestling. But even the poster there that I've got up on screen there does open with Will Ospreay presents Eve's Wrestle Queendom, and obviously this being a big show taking place at the Indigo, which is that little building next to the O2, which I've always, whenever I've been around those parts, I've always wondered what that was. There we go. It's the smaller building next to the O2 is what the Indigo was. You always see the adverts everywhere for it as well. It's a big old place for them to try and fill. So again, leveraging Ospreay's name makes sense. But I don't know, what have you made to the feedback to this? It's obviously been one that's driven a lot of conversation in a few different directions, and I'd expect Eve expected this, and I'd like to hope Ospreay expected this. And yeah, what you make of it all, JP?
There is, so it's
my
quite
name
conflicting
is
for this, isn't it? Because the issue here is that it's never a good look if you're talking about promoting an all-women's promotion and on International Women's Day, and the first person you're seeing is the man behind the scenes. Yeah, and it's like you're selling it on that name.
Male gaze, there is pretty much the Ospreay gaze.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's that. It's not a good look. It doesn't look particularly great for them to be doing that. However, one of the things I think a lot of people is remembering where Eve was. Eve felt so hand to mouth. If you saw them in the Resgal and the Resistance Gallery, Jesus Christ, if you could fit 100 people in there, you're doing incredibly well. It was very hand to mouth. It was one of the few all-women promotions who were able to get people in, but it felt like it was, if it had gone under at any moment, it wouldn't have been a surprise. At the minute, they've got a connection to get people in, like Chris Statlander, Willow Nightingale, Sisters of Sin, bring them in. What do they do? 600, I think, at the last show, like the Big Penny Social. It did really, really well. If the idea is, okay, we're just going to leverage his name, we've got to do this, it's a necessary evil, it gets us the venue, but it will also get us the talent, because there's a fair chance of getting a Tony Storm in for something like this. There's a fair chance that you can even get a Mercedes Moné. You can get people in like this, because that is it as much of a necessary evil? Is it worth that? Because it's 1,500 people, I think, is the capacity of the Indigo O2. So is that worth it? And there's a part of me thinks it kind of is, because if it doesn't have that, sooner or later, it just feels like it would die. It doesn't have enough of a sort of distribution deal and like to be able to kind of survive off its own right. It's just, you've got to think about the optics of this. Like, I'm not sure, like, you know, Will Ospreay plugging it in various ways would have been good. I just don't think he should have been the first person you necessarily see on the video. And I think the debate can be done in really good faith for this. But then it's also, okay, do you want this promotion to succeed? Do you want it to thrive? It looks like it's doing very well from the outside looking in. So therefore, it's worth doing.
Yeah, and the pushback isn't unreasonable. Like, it's funny because you get, when these conversation cycles go on, you get pushback to the pushback and then pushback to the pushback to the pushback. And like, I don't think anybody who made this decision or anybody who thinks this is a good idea shouldn't have expected this pushback. Like, very clearly the gamble was, we're going to put Will Ospreay Presents on the poster, we're going to spend 10 minutes talking about how, you know, this is Will Ospreay's story to sell the show, knowing that's a necessary evil to sell the tickets, to maybe even get the talent, as you alluded to there, and to make this the big show that they wanted to do. Like, that is the gamble they've decided to do. So I don't think anybody who's on that side of the aisle should be surprised by the criticism. You should be expecting it, and your thought should be, well, we're going to get criticized for it, but it's worth it because, and it's worth it because of, you know, we don't talk about Eve really, do we? And we're talking about it today. More people are talking about the show here. Melt's talking about it this week as well. Like, it's become a conversation point because of Ospreay's involvement, and that's the thought process. That's got to be, you've got to expect that to be part of the conversation. So, like, you know, it's ridiculous when people push back too hard and go, well, what are you even complaining about? And people have baggage when it comes to Ospreay, you know, that's understandable too. I've seen a bit of that poking around, as well as other people who work at Eve, you know, having issues with them going back long standing. But the question's going to be whether it's worth, you know, what they get out of this and whether it's worth the attention they get out of this, whether it's worth, like on the the show where this is announced, that Elite Encounters having a Willow Nightingale, like seeing a Lucy Sky work with a Willow Nightingale, like that's insane to me. Like I said it on the weekend show, I think we Lucy Sky is someone I remember being a toddler in the crowd at GPW shows, and she's working fresh up AEW TV, Willow Nightingale, and that is what that connection will give you. You know, Oscar can be at an AEW show and go, do you mind coming over? Eva's great, and showing them some videos and getting them coming over, like that contact. The question is whether that is worth, what they're giving up to get there, but it's worth it, to get a Rio working against a Nyla Rose, who again I'm sure was an Ospreay contact there as well. And the real question's going to be, do they sell this place out? Do they sell enough tickets to make it look good in the Indigos? Like 5,000 odd that they could potentially fit in there, JP, if maybe a little bit less. Like it's a lot.
I thought it was somewhere in the region of about 1,500.
Oh, was that all? Okay, well there you go. Yeah,
a bit. It was a bit smaller on there as well. But I'm going to very, very quickly check what the capacity is. So it's up to 2,700 for standing, 1,600 for seated events in there as well. So you could say around 2,000. Yeah, if you want to go for like 2.7, but not everyone will be standing for it, and obviously there's a ring in the middle of it as well. But that would surely be the biggest all-women's show, certainly in Europe. There wouldn't
still gigantic numbers, yeah.
Yeah, it's still big numbers for them in a niche of wrestling that has really been historically underserved. Now, I've often wondered. There's a couple of things for this. Will Ospreay must have not only sort of like an ownership interest in this. He'd be mad not to have for this, which is fair enough. It makes sense. His partner Alex Windsor is obviously being long-standing a part of Eve as well. But there's other things that are part of the show, which I have to say. And I was following the Discord when various people in the Discord were at the show and they were talking about it. It's been things like the burlesque that I've just gone, you need to get rid of that. Like that's something that I think takes away rather than say adding. That's something you just it's like what audience are you really serving with this? It's just like if you stick to note, we are an all women's wrestling promotion and we put on some great all women's matches, and then fundamentally that is your focus at the center of this, rather than stuff like that, which I think can. Certain audiences are going to react to that in different ways. There's things like that they need to kind of think about in there. So, Andy's saying here in the chat, like the biggest one, obviously they did was York Hall when they did the first WrestleKingdom, but then they got in trouble because, who was it? Something Morgan. I can't remember her name. Charlie, was it Charlie Morgan?
Charlie Morgan,
she made a dive off the balcony. Alan Nikita.
Once interviewed on this great show, JP, gotta say. One of our Christmas specials. I'm sure we had that on. I think Martin interviewed her.
Yeah, exactly. That's going back a hell of a long time. She seems like she's long retired. Yeah. But that's the thing that I think that there is definitely a niche for this. And there's definitely a chance for them to kind of stand out more than anything else. And now they've got access to global talent. They've got like a real in for that, because it's not only Will Ospreay. I think it's as much Alex Windsor. There's like the person they actually work with, who's done Stardom tours, who's obviously worked in AEW and come across really well in AEW as well. So I think the juice will be worth the squeeze, because I think they're going to do a big number for this. I think the names they're going to announce, I think people are going to travel and they're going to do at least 1,500, which at that point makes you think, that was worth it, regardless of the legitimate criticisms that people would have about the way that this show has been initially promoted. And hopefully the rest of the marketing after this won't feel the same as that.
They should take the feedback on board a little bit, I think. They've got the attention now. Maybe dial it back just a little bit. I don't think it needs to be so much Will Ospreay's name in there. Just smaller font, a little bit, slightly smaller font. That might resolve some issues for people as well. That might be reasonable. But there you go. Like I say, we're talking Eve, and we don't often talk Eve, and I'm sure we'll be talking the show when it comes round to it as well. So that kind of speaks for itself too as well. But while we're on the subject, bit of AEW to talk about as well. And talking about we mentioned Cardiff tonight. We mentioned AEW. Might as well talk some AEW Cardiff tickets amongst some other AEW news stories we've got to talk to today, JP. And yeah, they've got their own tickets to shift here, so maybe they won't be so generous with sending talent out as they have in those last couple of stories, as we are now at a count when it comes to AEW at the Utility Arena in Cardiff. We are looking at 4,127 being the setup, with 2,803 tickets distributed so far for, like I say, AEW's Collision recording in Cardiff. And that means there's 1,324 tickets available still to this day in Cardiff, JP. And I think we've got, do we have the numbers on the Manchester show as well, slowly ticking over too?
We do. I'm not going to share the screen because it's 411 Mania, so it would break the entire show if that is the case. By all accounts, according to Wrestling Observer newsletter, 8,391 tickets sold for the December 17th Dynamite at the Co-op Live in there as well. This is the strongest advance for any of the other Dynamites they've got out there as well. Now, I would expect it maybe if it tops out around 10,000, that's very good. I don't know how you feel about this Cardiff show. I mean, perhaps because it's a Collision and you're selling to like a Collision base that we all know what Collision is. Are people going to make that kind of trip over to Cardiff for it? I know I've kind of
Well, we saw it already, didn't we? Oh, no, Wembley weekend, yeah.
Well, the problem is I'm off to see Arsenal Wolves that day. So that's completely put the kibosh on that. I've won a couple of ballots over Christmas. So I've got that tickets for that and the Brighton game.
Not coming up for the Everton game, mate, on the Saturday before Christmas. Saturday night, 8 p.m. in Liverpool City Centre we're playing you. That's fucking... That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Like, there's no Arsenal fans are getting back to London, mate, that night. It's not happening. No. You'll get swallowed up by Everton going on in town.
Last train back leaves 15 minutes into the game itself. So it's like 8:15 for that train going to Euston. So
and hotels are going to be nonsense that Saturday as well. Last Saturday before Christmas. There you go, Grapple Night Out. We'll do it all in one.
I think if you're wise, I know this is completely off topic, go out on the piss, get that first train back. Do it that way. Go classic old school. There's a train at R5. Go out, a few shandies,
train of shame.
Wait at the train station. Yeah, the train of shame. Do it that way. That's the easiest way to do it. But for this, I mean, looking at the Collision tickets as well, the cheapest ticket on there for standard admission is £64.25. That's a fucking lot. Like, that really is. Like, I mean, you know, we'll talk about some other ticket prices and stuff like the lower end as well for shows that are going to feel like a bit more important. But for an episode of Collision, like, that's a lot. Like, I don't know why they felt the need that they needed to charge that much, particularly in the run up to Christmas, which can't be discounted. Like, you want to bring
along discounted tickets, though, won't there?
There will be, because I think that's what they're going to have to do in order to shift these remaining ones. I think they'll shift a few in the build-up close to the time, but in order to make it look like it's a sellout, and maybe after this, just think to themselves, do they need to run Cardiff again? Just for have a break.
That was the surprise, wasn't it? When they announced the 2 dates, it was like, okay, makes sense. They're not doing London by Cardiff. Yeah. Like, do Manchester and somewhere in Scotland, dare I say? Go as north as you possibly can. Newcastle, even. You know, if you want to stick to England, like, there was options.
Oh God, yeah. There was so many options for them to do. Birmingham and everything else, even the South Coast. But like, this is one that didn't make too much sense in there. But yeah, definitely the Manchester tickets are the ones, like, looking at those, they'll hit 10K. It'll look great for TV. That'll be like a big deal for them. Whereas everything else they're selling at the minute, like, I mean, even, you know, for so much other stuff, like, I think that's outsold. Like, moving on to another story from there as well in terms of Full Gear. Full Gear's sold 7,763. They've set out for 8,928. But this is an arena in the Prudential Center. Have you been to the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey? It feels like you have.
I have a few times. At least twice,
16,000. It's a big old arena, isn't it? I imagine New Jersey Devils play there or something. It'd be the ice hockey team?
Possibly. Can't remember.
Yeah. Like, looking at that, like, that's, and, you know, cheapest ticket for that is $40, and that's a pay-per-view. And I think there's, you know, just, this is the thing that AEW...
There'll be $1 tickets outside, 100%.
There will.
And it won't just be Brett Lauderdale shifting them this time. Yeah.
Yeah. But they just need to make sure that they just cater to the base, cater to those fans who feel like they've been priced out of wrestling, which is a common complaint, even when the wrestlers are picking up on this. You need to think that there's an element of PR battle that you can win of going, our tickets are generally affordable. So, like, you know, make sure that you're capping your lowest ticket, that it is a $40 ticket. Because if you do that, I think people would be a bit more forgiving, at least. It's just that I look at that 65 quid for a collision and I'm like, nah, you're right. That is probably £20 more than what I'm paying to go and see Arsenal Wolves. And that's Arsenal, you know, it's fucking Arsenal at home, for God's sake. I know I'm biased in this.
Try going to Fulham, mate. Tony would not be sympathetic to you. But on an AEW tickets related notes, he did do your favourite thing, JP, and doing the rounds this week. Did mention he'd like to take AEW to France and Germany. So there you go. He is listening, JP. So maybe that could be where AEW ends up next. Very, very interesting. And I wanted to mention it before when we were talking about the Indies, but we got a little bit sidetracked. I did also enjoy, just on an AEW related note before we move on to similar stories with TNA. Like, this Eddie, did you see Eddie Kingston on Busted Open this week? When we mentioned Eddie before on the Indies, this was the first thing that came to mind. Oh, you've got to see that. Bully Ray is like, you know, that meme of like the worst person you know makes a good point. Like, goes in on Eddie Kingston for the most part, like in a nice way. But like when Eddie was talking to him, and obviously the indie quote came up, you know, talked about how, you know, Eddie's got to have more belief in himself. Not many people are as good at what you do as you are when it comes to being on the microphone. Talked about how he loves Eddie's passion and the way he wrestles. And like Eddie tried to say something about like disparaging his own look, and Bubba tried to say, no, that's genuinely like a positive point we do. You look like not everyone needs to be a bodybuilder. You're very unique. You know, you just kind of need to stop caring about what other people say, and you need to have more belief in yourself. And honestly, it resonated so strongly. Like, I was like, he's totally right. Like he says there, Eddie Kingston, you could still be the guy. I 1,000,000% agree. Like, I don't know what it is. And again, time of recording, we haven't seen Blood and Guts, so we'll see if he does anything on that show. But like, in playing second fiddle to Hook, the last couple of weeks of television hasn't like sat right with me. Clearly, there's something in Eddie Kingston that maybe Tony Khan saw when we were critical of, you know, and I think Age Like Milk, some of the takes going, oh no, we shouldn't do a big Eddie Kingston return to AEW. It's the least Eddie Kingston thing possible. He should just come back and start kicking ass. Well, they haven't even done that. Like, even if your expectations were low for how AEW were going to reintroduce Eddie Kingston to TV, television has been even lower than that. And maybe that is, you know, Tony Khan recognizing that Eddie's not motivated or doesn't believe in himself or doesn't want to be there even, you know, because his body language feels like he doesn't necessarily want to be there right now and he's just collecting a check. But honestly, it's the only time I've ever watched Bully Ray say something and go, nah, you're right, mate, and Eddie should listen to you. And I'd like to think it could light a candle under his ass, but yeah, wanted to reference it because he was dead on, and it is just a bizarre situation. You know, AEW is crying out for top line names right now. It's crying out for upper mid carders or people even to face Hangman Page. Like, Eddie Kingston could fill so many roles in AEW and not just be Hook's mate. You know, he's like, worse than being Denzel's mate is being Hook's mate, and that's what Eddie is right now. I really hope he takes this seriously.
Oh God, he needed to have someone say this to him, even if it is generally someone who I cannot stand, and I just can't listen to him talk about wrestling in Bully Ray. He's right though; he's completely right, because if you think about the thing that people have, I mean, I think this is a sort of bigger meta issue, sort of post COVID. What people have wanted is authenticity. They've just wanted a sense of like that, like you can believe in these people, and as soon as you, like, the Players Tribune article that he wrote was something he just went, oh, wow, this is brilliant, combined with how his character was on TV, who should be coming out saying, I'm a wrestler, I'm not a bodybuilder, like, and just using that again, using the body guy stuff like against the body guy, of just like, yeah, you'll go to the WBF, go and say your prayers and take your vitamins, like, I'm here to wrestle, I'm here to fight, and this is how I look. There's that element of authenticity about him. It feels like a very like there's a problem with self-belief, which has often, I think, been the issue with Eddie Kingston throughout the entirety of his career. This is like, just seeing from what he said on here in terms of some of the quotes on there, it's believable. Therefore, when it feels more authentic, you're more emotionally invested. And this goes for anything. This goes for actors. If you think about, you know, how many actors are just like effectively glorified models who appear in various things. You don't feel any connection to them. You can't relate to them. There's nothing about them that makes you think, yeah, I like this person. I often think like part of the reason The Traitors works, because it's people of all like kind of varying ages, and none of them are kind of modeled. There's a refreshing lack of people wanting to be influencers on there, and therefore people are immediately more invested within that, even though we don't really ever learn anything about our lives, because there's just a relatability thing for the average person. That's what Eddie Kingston has in fucking spades. That's what Hook does not have. Like, he just doesn't have this.
There's
and
a lot of things Hook doesn't have, but that's one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Hook had stuff for like the first year of his career, and you just thought, well, there's something you can do here. And
not even a great theme anymore. Hasn't even got that. Still a cracking look lad though. He's just, that's all you know that combo. Thought to bring it up because it is one occasion where Bully Ray was right. But speaking of which, not the only audio appearance of Bully Ray this week, as there was as we slide into another company, JP, but it is AEW related. Bully Ray was, I think it was Bully, Devon, Matt, and Jeff were on Jericho's. I had to double check this, JP, that this wasn't just something that someone bullied Jericho into saying. It was in fact on his own podcast that he released. But Jericho had a few interesting quotables regarding AEW that might give you an inkling that I think that might be done at this point.
He did, yes. According on Talk is Jericho, he said that TNA looked like the second biggest company in the world at Bound for Glory. To quote him here, that crowd looked huge. It looked huge. It was like a WWE level crowd. The place was packed, more of which are none. I was watching this and not saying anything out of school here, but comparing it to watching Dynamite when they were at the ECW arena, which looked like a Tony Condello taping. Sorry, it did. I think Tony Condello is the guy who would do those tours in northern Canada where you'd be driving across like a frozen lake and stuff like that. So you're really taking your life in your hands. TNA looked like the second biggest company in the world, and that was amazing. And the presentation was amazing. My big read on this is that this is someone who, like, and I say I could look completely daft because he could make some appearance on Blood and Guts, which by the time most people listen to this will have come and gone. But this speaks to someone who's on his way out of the company, which I just think good. And we'll talk in a minute about the place being packed in there. And, you know, there's a lot of things that AEW need in order to kind of boost things up and rejig it. Chris Jericho is not one of those things.
No. And
here.
Yeah, and I think even here as well, even if he's right, which he is, like we said it at the time, those ECW arena shows look like shit. They didn't look good, and they've had a couple of residencies recently that haven't looked great and haven't looked major league. Even if he thinks that, he was always smart enough to not say those things out loud, wasn't he? And like, again, it being on his own podcast that he could have edited out, like, there's a reason that stayed in the final edit. There's a reason he made that comparison. He could have just put TNA over and not mentioned AEW, but like, yeah, that does tell you. I mean, maybe it's a Hail Mary, maybe it's he's not getting anything, but Triple H isn't responding to his texts or emails, and he just thought, I'll bury a bit of AEW, maybe that'll make me be friends with Paul. But yeah, unless Levesque really, really doesn't want him and CM Punk coming to a WrestleMania near you, as much as I hate to hear it. Maybe they'll keep them on separate shows, but yeah, Jericho Hall of Fame induction, Jericho on a SmackDown, Jericho and Dominic Mysterio, something like that is coming, and he's going to be on WTV sooner rather than later. But yeah, you mentioned it there, obviously, as he is reacting to the TNA Bound for Glory number. Lion Liars to Lion Liars is there. How's we got it worded on the notes here for this final Bound for Glory number we've got, JP?
Yeah, they have indeed. So the for Bound for Glory, the October 12th show at the Songus Arena in Lowell, Massachusetts, they announced their crowd as being 7,794, which is a North American record in theory. In practice, it sold 5,554 tickets, had a turnstile count of 6,137, which is right with the amount of comps and stuff like this. They said that the capacity was listed at 7,241, grew to 7,484 because they added in some more premium seats. This is the God's work that Brandon Thurston does, because he does that chasing up. So he went to the University of Massachusetts, Lowell, which owns the arena, and their venue operator, the Oakview Group, and went there as well. Don't get me wrong, did a big gate for them. Was it 390,000 for them? That's absolutely gigantic for TNA. Yeah. But this is, I mean, there's a couple of reasons why they would do this. One, because they can. and there isn't that level of oversight, so they feel they can say they've got it out there. Most people won't get round to seeing this report, so that fake number becomes the real one, a la 93,000 at the Silverdome. But also, if you're trying to sell this product on TV for tens of millions of dollars a year, you want to be able to say, we had our big show, it drew nearly 400,000 and, did the guts of 8,000 people there as well. We are a really hot product. That's the thing that they're trying to do. They're doing the smoke and mirrors. And it's the most WWE thing in the world to do. And that's what they're learning from. That's their partner. That's the way that it works here.
Yeah. It buries the lead a bit of the good story, because the good story is it's impressive. They sold 5,500 tickets. AEW don't do that unless it's a pay-per-view, unless it's a big show like Blood and Guts tonight. It doesn't happen. It was genuinely a good news story for a promotion like TNA to be able to pull that number. They just have to have wrestling bullshit. Even the TNA PR person, Ross Foreman here, who's a name we might know from, was it WCW Magazine? Used to work in back in the day. He says that beyond our ticketed attendees, we also had many seats and standing room only, occupied by TNA credentialed guests, media, staff, VIPs, and other groups, i.e. literal people who were working in the building and selling the popcorn and selling the drinks. They can't help themselves. It doesn't make them sound good. They'd be better off just telling the truth. And apparently the gate of 390,000, that itself was impressive as well. It is. You've got to talk about this three-dimensionally. We will always say read the history book. And, there's the TNA WWE relationship is fraught with problems, but one positive has been attendance for shows like this. And just the shop window of being on NXT TV, even if a lot of it's been bad, has produced at least one positive outcome. And it's been stuff like this. And they should be shouting it from the rooftops. I just would rather be told the truth, but the wrestling people, JP, so that's just how this thing go.
It's just what they do, isn't it? There's not 2,000 people working on the show and being backstage. There's that would just be.
It's a lot.
That's a lot of. There'd be a lot of people wandering around for that to be the case. 2,000 people. There's only so many people who are selling.
Imagine any other industry doing that. No one else does that, do they? We have more people in the cinema because there were people selling the tickets. It's nonsense.
The way football clubs might do it, if they've sold every ticket technically, but not everyone turns up because they might well have turned against the club. Arsenal did this for a while. They were like, we've got to sell out. Yeah, exactly. And then you get around to the turnstile counts and whatnot. But it's just it doesn't do anyone any favours. You're better off just sort of telling the truth about this, which is something that's always been refreshing about New Japan in recent years. It's just telling the truth. Good, bad, ugly, just say what it is, because then at least you're not blinding yourself to that necessarily being the issue. And this isn't an issue for TNA. It's their big boost has been I always come back to they'd be doing pay-per-views in front of 100 people. And now, it seems like the minimum attendance for a TNA big show is about 2,000. They do some really impressive numbers and they look impressive on TV. And they've been doing this for a little while with the NXT relationship. And everything else on the TV's pretty much shite, but that is the thing that they've managed to take out of it.
Well, moving on from TNA, we might as well talk their partner in WWE, where we've got a bit of time left, JP. And I did actually watch a full Monday Night Raw this week, rated by Cage Matches at 8 point something this week, which is a bit of a shock. It wasn't that good, but it was fine. It was pretty good. I was going to say, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with Dom versus John? Do you want to start with the War Game setup, JP, as we talk here on Blood and Guts Night? Do we want to talk about them, being an MSG next week for John Cena's last MSG appearance, or do we want to start where the patrons want us to start and the Discord members want us to start, JP, in the story of Phillip Brooks's hair? Because that was my biggest takeaway coming out of Monday Night Raw this week, is what is going on with this. Is it called a pompadour? The kids call it here, as he's facing Cody Rhodes in this image we've got in the video version here. It's getting somebody could live in that thing at this point, mate. It's getting ridiculous. I personally think he looks good, and I do enjoy the fact that as a quite non-original take, but it's one I've always thought you can pinpoint the day, the year, the month, whatever CM Punk is doing. You show me, I could be at, what was that show back in the day, JP? Was it where you'd go on and you'd have a special skill? It was like a Saturday night show, and I remember there being a kid who went on there and they'd show him a second of WWF tape footage, and he could tell you right away what show that was from. And that was his special skill he did on the show. Was that what it was called? You Bet. There you go. I could go on a You Bet equivalent, and you could show me a half a second clip of CM Punk, and if he was wearing like the yellow basketball shorts, or he had like the blonde bleach hair, I could be like, that's Joe Punk too. Or if I saw him in like the white basketball shorts, I could be like, yeah, that's the hero match from the Indies that went about 90 minutes. You can pinpoint wherever CM Punk is based on his gear, his facial hair, and his haircut, because that man loves a change of image. And yeah, in 10 years, we're all going to be looking back at whatever is going on with his hair at this point. Hair transplants, has he been to Turkey? I'm not sure. And we're going to know what happened in 2025 to me.
That was my note on this. Has Phil been to Turkey? I mean, I don't know how he'd hassle people trying to sell him hooky football shirts along the way. Like, I think he might end up kicking off about that. But it's an incredible.
Am I alone in thinking he looks good? I think it's a great head of hair. I think if I had that, I mean, I've got a head of hair. I only wear a hat cap these days, but I'm aiming for that, mate. I'm going to grow it out while I'm here in Thailand and shock everybody if we do a live show next year and pull it off and pull out a fantastic mane like CM Punk. It can be done naturally, folks.
Yeah, it can. I mean, and he's got I don't want to compare myself too much to Phil. There are many reasons that I'm not like Phil, particularly in general life ethos.
He's still doing well with the hair front, still doing good.
Well,
that's one thing my dad gave me in our Peter.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the one thing I appear to have got from my dad is he didn't go grey particularly early on top. I'm like, generally it's fine for grey on that. The grey all appears in the beard, rather like Phil does these days as well. We're of a similar age, so I'm like, that's all right. There's nothing wrong with that head of hair. I think when you get to that age, like, I mean, how old's he now? Like 46? Beggars can't be fucking choosers, can they? I mean, like, Jesus Christ, like. It's a thoroughly decent head of hair. It's a big head of hair, that much I would say. And he can't help. I think it was James he put into the Discord that he looks. I want to say it was. Is it Beavis?
Beavis. Yeah, Beavis.
Beavis. That it is very Beavis-esque, like in terms of how he looks.
I can see it.
And Cody does
look
a bit
back
like Butthead there as well. So like,
yeah, it works.
It does work between them. But I mean, yeah, it's a cracking head of hair that he's got on this.
It's a legitimate mane. It is. Well, there you go. That's the lead story from Raw. Also, Dominic Mysterio and John Cena had the match. And Triple H took another lap of honor, which I thought of you when he came out. What has John Cena's career got to do with Triple H? Like, other than burying him at various points or having that WrestleMania match that I was unfortunate enough to be in the building for in Chicago. Speaking of Chicago Man Punk way back in the DJP. Like, why was he there to take that victory up? Just let Cena come out. Let Cena do the last Massachusetts appearance on his own. Let it be about Cena and let it be about what it became about, which was, a great little back and forth with Dominic Mysterio and as good a, WWE style match as you're going to get out of John later. Like, I did enjoy what they did. In fact, I even enjoyed, like, as much as a lot of the rest of the show wasn't for me, it is WWE in 2025. I appreciate the tearing up of the format, doing the ECW thing where it's, the call out happens, we do the promo, the belt gets put on the line. I guess that's why you need the Triple H out there, although he does have two general managers who could have filled that role straight into the match. Like, it made for a very WWE and probably not for a lot of our audience entertaining, open 45 minutes if you can put the Triple H stuff out of your head. And yeah, it's the type of thing I like to see AEW do more of, not necessarily this, but things where you rip up the format and you do something a little bit different. And yeah, I think that's a lot of the reason, as well as maybe some of the main event, that people that are positive on this show or don't put in a shift. And again, is a very entertaining character, and it was I think a good payoff to the Dominic Mysterio run. I know there were some misgivings about him dropping the IC title at this point to Cena after everything they put behind them, but it felt like a good payoff for Dominic Mysterio, and it's something he'll get heat out of whichever direction they go with him next.
Yeah, I don't worry about Dominic Mysterio for this. In fact, I think the closest comparison I was thinking of him today, because I also watched all of Raw. I mean, there were bits of it that I.
And we didn't mention it. The Mysterio promo last week was really good. The head-to-head with Dom and Ray. He's literally the best wrestler in the WWE. It's just true. Like, and again, his matches aren't even necessarily good, but they don't need to be. He's Dominic Mysterio, he's the good Dominic Mysterio matches, and that's what this was.
He is. I mean, really who he is he's effectively like Pero Aguayo Jr. in the sense he's the son of this beloved babyface who he's never going to be able to replicate. So instead, he's just a monster heel, and he's kind of embraced that. And yet, he's still not entirely there on the mic and obviously not necessarily in the ring, but there's just a presence and everything else that he kind of like takes to it. He just looks the part, coming out and cutting like the beginning bit of his promo in Spanish as well at the same time, talking about him being the AAA mega champion and stuff like that. And he'll survive without the IC belt. I think this has always been Matty's theory that, you know, he loses the IC belt to him because that's the one belt that Cena's never had, and he can win it back in the tournament. They can do something along those lines, and he can win it back.
I think most people are expecting Gunther, but they could do that.
Well, I would expect now on the back of this, expecting Gunther to win the tournament, and that will be the last match. But then after that, they'll do a tournament for the IC title, and then they can just move that title back onto him, maybe. Because I wouldn't want to see Gunther with the IC belt. I wonder if that might be a route where he just says, look, I've won this title, but I'm not going to be around, so he can give it up heroically, and that's a thing that can be there. But the thing I found about the show overall, I mean, I'd heard these like people absolutely buzzing about it, and I was like, okay, right, I might have to watch this. And it was like, I'll watch it without any spoilers. I was like, okay. It moved at a pace that I didn't expect of watching an episode of Monday Night Raw. Normally, I have been like, there's a point where I just end up bored, and I look at it and the storylines, I think, this isn't really for me in there. And a lot of the wrestling, sort of like up to the main event match was good. Fine. I wouldn't go any further than that. I wouldn't go overboard with it. I mean, you'll see better things on AEW TV. I throw out there that Ace Austin versus Carl Fletcher was a match that I found myself loving on Collision this week.
But that's a good comparison point, isn't it? Like, that might be a better match to people like me and you. Like, I don't say that lightly. We're wrestling fans. We want to see good wrestling matches. I think that's fair. But is the Dominic Mysterio versus John Cena match, like we saw at Open Raw, a much more effective match? Is Dominic Mysterio much more effective at being Dominic Mysterio in his matches than, and I'm not saying this about Ace Austin, but, you know, any number of guys you can come on Collision and have a banger with Carl Fletcher. Like, is that time as effective for them as, you know, what you can see a Dominic Mysterio do with his time and other people on the WWE roster do with their time? There's something to be said for that. There is. There is,
and I think this comes
especially back in WWE. It's arguably more important. You hear it from Matty all the time.
Oh, yeah. And I think it's that format change, isn't it? Like, I mean, you know, and I think that's the big thing about this is doing that kind of, because by the time that everything, like say with the match and whatnot finished, that 45 minutes have gone, and you're like, okay, that was thoroughly entertaining as a, you know, as an angle leading into it. Was, I mean, Triple H being there is going to come a point where that crowd are going to turn against it because it becomes.
Did you see the sign behind him? Triple H sucks.
Yeah,
thought that was going to be your background tonight.
Honestly, I wish I had put that in there now in hindsight. I think I got distracted by CM Punk's pompadour instead. But like, that sign is you're going to see more of this. You're going to see more people doing this because it's just like the show isn't about you yet. The show is all about him, and he's just turning into a Vince McMahon figure. But yeah, it was I thought that opening match, really good bit of business, and I thought I was perfectly fine with the result. He's AAA champion as well, so like that's fine. Like he'll work his way back into the mix. I don't worry about Dominic Mysterio whatsoever there. And you know, Cena winning and it feeling, you know, the fact that it's in Boston as well, and it was like an easy way to just get the crowd entirely on board at the beginning of the show by doing something like that. Just an easy bit of fan service, something that they haven't done like so much. And you know, speaking about the ticket price and what the amount they would have paid for it, it's you know, you're giving them something at least that they're going to like and take away from the show.
Yeah, you ain't getting that on SmackDown because that was a rough show this week. But yeah, the main event, Kabuki Warriors against Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss. That team has got over for whatever I thought about them at the start. I didn't think much of Sheamus, Shinsuke Nakamura. Didn't necessarily make me want to see Nakamura Cena as much as I think Nakamura Tanahashi would make sense. But we're not getting that now, and obviously, we're building the stuff with Nikki Bella and Stephanie Vicaire, and presumably we've got AJ Lee coming back next week to set stuff up with Becky Lynch as well. MSG feels like a good place to bring AJ Lee back as well. So there was certainly some positive there.
There is. I also assumed as well the mystery opponent when they were going through the people in the Time Is Now tournament. That must be Matt Cardona. They're back in New York.
Feels like it.
It feels
Cody's
like
put a word in.
Yeah. feels like a no-brainer. He has the look that they want. He's desperate to go in there, and like he'll be looking to impress, and he'll happily go into woo phase, won't he? That's an easy thing.
Pushed off a stage by Kane. Go through the whole lot. Full circle moment for old Matt Cardona. Yeah, Matty pulled up that clip from the original when he was doing the Long Island Iced Z show, and some interviewer, even Ariel, was asking Cena and Triple H what they thought of this young Matt Cardona, and whether he could potentially be a star in WWE. And Triple H just buries him, and I think he's always felt like that about him. So if they bury him on TV, don't be surprised. I'm sure Joe Hendry will get a look in this thing as well. But yeah, outside of that, a couple of other WWE news notes before we get into some other quick stuff before we get out of AJP.
We do indeed. So in terms of some rebranding, there's been a bit of an update on this of like Vince McMahon's previous events that were in there as well. Mark Shapiro was talking about it. He did seem to suggest he was on something called the Main Event with Andrew Marchand, and he was suggesting that WWE staple events such as WrestleMania and the Royal Rumble could end up being phased out as they were created by Vince McMahon in there, and saying, "Oh, they're open to new ideas and things like this," and about saying a lot of the PLEs were created by Vince McMahon and they want to move past this, bigging up WrestlePalooza. I don't know why it didn't sell a whole lot of pay-per-views in there as well. But by all accounts, according to Fightful Select, this isn't going to be the case in here, is that because it's simply said Saudi Arabia isn't paying for WrestlePalooza, they're paying for WrestleMania. And the value of that name and the brand is the reason for that. That would be like an act of such supreme self-sabotage if they had changed any of those. It would just be the daftest thing in the world. They are baked into the cake with what WWE is, particularly like Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. It shouldn't be even remotely ever brought up. If somebody said we need to get rid of the WrestleMania name, you get rid.
Like Pollock said, like people buy tickets because it's Royal Rumble. People buy tickets just for WrestleMania. Like Matty will make an argument that Roman Reigns is this great door. He's responsible for some of the people in the building, but really what sells the tickets for WrestleMania? It's WrestleMania. You don't know what's on the card, but you buy the tickets and you buy the travel package 6 months out. You're absolutely right. You don't do that for WrestlePalooza. Don't even do that for War Games coming up as much as they're put all the big baby faces together. So like I say, that follow-up report that they're going to be replacing some of the minor pay-per-views, that makes more sense than what originally came out here. And I do think they need to do a bit more digging though than WrestlePalooza, but surely they've just got to take the L on at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, they're not going to though. They're never.
Which is an ECW name anyway, as Chris Elliott says. Absolutely.
And it was a terrible ECW. It was like it was one of the ones that even they didn't continue with.
It was dated when they used it. Never mind now. Is it their Fighter Fest? I think it is. I think that's it. It's WWE's Fighter Fest.
I think it is, isn't it, for that? But there's no way that they're ever like going to be moving past these. This is just be absolutely daft. It makes you worry about Shapiro. Well, it doesn't make me worry about Shapiro, but other people who just think, God, if that's his element of judgment, then sod that. But also in another, obviously linked to Vince McMahon, we have had an update on the Janelle Grant case. She says that the doctor who's linked to Vince McMahon, Carlin Coker, viewed her medical file days after the federal search was executed. This is according to her attorneys. They checked the metadata for this as well, saying that he accessed her file on July 27th, 2023. That was a year after her treatment ended and 10 days after the federal agents executed a search warrant and served a grand jury subpoena on Vince McMahon in there as well. There was a WWE filing with the SEC at the time that disclosed the search and its date in there. So there's a new legal motion put in by Janelle Grant's team in there, asking the court to order Coker to provide more evidence in there as well. And obviously they're seeking evidence through a limited type of litigation called a bill of discovery. And this is to determine whether to bring a lawsuit against the doctor and his clinic, including claims of conspiracy and aiding and abetting the sex trafficking and the abuse that she accuses Vince McMahon of.
Yeah.
So
it's
little
again,
update.
that timing is not coincidental, but it explains why they're going after Dr. Colin Coker so hard. They know there's a connection there, and they know there's a reason why would be access to their files only days after presumably Vince McMahon's house got searched, and the grand jury subpoena happened. So I think there's more smoke to that fire, and I imagine we'll see more come out as we go. But there you go. That is a WWE story, always worth mentioning. But that is the last WWE news story, and like I say, as far as everything else going on with that, we will follow it as it comes. But I don't know, outside the WWE, JP, what else is going on? You've been watching anything else the last while, fitting it in between viewings of Monday Night Raw and the exciting build for War Games. I say that the MSG show next week might be decent. We'll see. That AJ Lee pop will be massive if she turns out to be the one behind Maxine Dupree. So we'll see where it goes. But any other wrestling you've been watching this week before we get out of it?
I have a couple of things. I watched a bit of Noah's Star Navigation 2025.
I did too.
Which was, I'd be interested. I watched the top 2 matches of this because I felt like the masochist in me had to watch Hank and Tank versus Masochist.
Oh, I didn't see that.
And Takeshi Segura. I really wouldn't bother if I were you. It's like some people have given it absolutely horrible ratings. Like, it's not great. It's not the worst match in the world. It's more notable about why this is happening. Like, why are they winning this when they were NXT champions not that long ago? Like, the idea they're going over to Noah to win the GHC belts just seems like really odd timing in this. But the show itself was headlined by the main match, which was Yoshiki Inamura defeating Kenta for the GHC heavyweight title. And this was, he won with a top rope splash in there as well. Then Kaito Kiyomiya came out at the end, so he's become his first challenger. That's going to be happening towards the end of this month, November 21st at Crossover there as well. And I don't know about you, I thought this was a good match. I thought it was like I'd heard things about like sort of necessarily like Kenta coming back in, but I thought Yoshiki Inamura came in with a fair bit of. I did think he looked good. Came with a bit of fire, and it had a bit of pace to it, which quite often, if you're watching a Noah main event, they can be dull, plodding affairs for like the guts of 30 minutes. But it felt like he brought something else out of Kenta that meant that it was working
in both directions. I think because I think Inamura's got the daft, obviously the NXT ties now, and like the daft cowboy hat or whatever the fuck he's doing, all of that stuff. Like, sound, but like, it brought like a more serious side out of him. And the reason I threw this on JP was that I'd heard Kenta's been pretty decent over the last while during this run. I didn't know this was where he was going to be dropping the belt as well, but I have to say, it was the most motivated I've seen a Kenta performance. It's the hardest I've seen him kick since 15 years ago when you see him kick off random blokes' heads on Noah shows and on indie shows when you make the trips. It was just a good match with not a huge amount of drama, but strongly putting over Inamura, and that's the job that it was there to do. That's the job Kenta was there to do in front of an invested, my old haunt JP, Corrigan Hall crowd. Like, it really worked. It was good. It didn't blow me away. It wasn't necessarily, like I said, I had very crazy praise of Kenta during this run, but I can also see where it's coming from. It's a better looking Kenta than we saw in New Japan, and a better looking Kenta than we've seen pretty much anywhere over the last few years as well. So doing the job was there, felt like the right result too as well. So I'm glad to just jump in and jump out and see it. I'm not going to necessarily be a long-term Noah viewer like you and Gareth a few years ago, but thought it was a strong match.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely better than the last. I remember seeing Kenta he was headlining the show that they did at Sumo Hall, and that was like. I just wasn't into it, and I'm struggling to even think who he defended. It was Masa Kitamiya who'd won the N1 victory, and that was, I found it like pretty dull, to be honest with you, which I didn't feel that here. It sort of just, I thought it was a good match. Young guy being put over strong. He's like,
but a WWE guy, that's the only worry.
That's my big thing in all of this, and seeing the tag belts go onto NXT guys there as well, and the fact that you had the Charlie Dempsey and the other guy, I want to say his name was Harlem Lewis, who came in and they did some shots the other month. You can't help but feel like just by strengthening those ties, and this ties in with the Nakamura stuff we said earlier on as well, that they are becoming this like kind of offshoot, and we know kind of where this could end up. I mean, Noah aren't making money as far as I can tell. They have quite expensive production values, although they do have a very sort of dedicated Korakuen crowd going to these shows, they tend to do good numbers in Korakuen, and that crowd is very much invested, and they seem to go there more for some of their big shows as well, which they should do. If you're not going to sell out Sumo Hall, you're only going to do 3,000 there, you might as well just have near 1,500 people who are hot about the product in a Korakuen Hall. But it does make me worry about where they're going to be going and where the future is for them, and about at some point if WWE say effectively we want you to be, not saying NXT Japan, but just an offshoot of it where they're going to be sending people to, which they've been doing recently, then like it is going to be Noah. It just feels like it's much more solidified. But ultimately, I think they're building to Inamura versus Ozawa. That will be the big match for them. And then at some point, I would predict it'll be one of my predictions when we come round to doing the Grappies and Clappies that Ozawa will end up signing with WWE. That will be something that we end up hearing about in 2026, because that would be the hottest match they can kind of put in there as well, even though they're going to use Kaito Kiyomiya as a kind of like a stopgap. But it's young guys on top in Noah. So, you take the small victories where you can. But yeah. Yeah.
Well,
so,
sorry, go on. Yeah, speaking of small victories, you said you watched a bit of Rev Pro as well?
I did. A match that I feel we were being asked every week. Have you seen Leon Cage versus Nino Bryan? Have you seen Leon Cage?
Well, I'll be the heel, I haven't.
I did. I did watch it. It was a hell of a lot of fun. It was at Rev Pro Live in London 101. So it was a couple of weeks ago. It was like 25 minutes long, like junior cruiserweight championship match. And I thought it was really good. Don't get me wrong. It's a spot fest between two guys who are able to do it. The idea was Leon Cage he'd won a number one contendership. Then he got a knee injury. He's come back. There was a lot of sort of selling of the knee, but he was challenging for that title. They did some ridiculous kind of bumps in there as well. There was one where Leon Cage took like a big bump off, he sort of went over from the top rope onto the apron, and it just looked like kind of quite gnarly, but it was very good, and it was played up quite well, because it would be occasionally Leon Cage was going to go for a move, and then he would kind of feel the knee, or there'd be that element of hesitation, and they kind of played into that as well. But it was like kind of good, easy, crowd pleasing stuff, and it sort of moved along at such a pace, the kind of stuff that they should be showcasing on these shows. And Porchester Hall looks great. I was looking at it, it's like a 15-minute walk from Paddington, which would be the station I'd get to go back home as well. And I'm like, do you know what? I'm going to bring along like the lads to that, because that feels like absolutely cracking venue. And yeah, I saw some from Brit Wrestle Away days. Ben had said where if you want to go to the loos, you've got to go right downstairs into kind of like the basement of the building, whereas they're up on the first floor for it. But it looks like a kind of venue as well where you can hold big shows, because they've probably got 200 to 300 in there, and it looks like it could do a lot more than that if you absolutely packed it with some big matches. And after the match, Leo Rush came out because he's on an extended tour over here at the minute. I don't know what the reasoning is behind it, and it seemed to be they were building to a three-way between them as well. And I imagine that could be actually a hell of a lot of fun, as long as you're not doing that black heart shite. Then if it's just doing like Leo Rush things with these two guys, I feel like it meshes really well. And, Leon Cage is much more of the kind of look, as opposed to Nino Bryan, who doesn't necessarily have that. But I thought in the end, it was like thought it was really good.
Good stuff. Well, they've got the anniversary tickets on sale as well at the minute as well. Yeah. Big prices, but understandable considering the scale of the venue and running the Ovo Arena there at Wembley. But looks like, by all accounts, selling well in the early stages, and I don't believe they put all of the tickets on sale yet either. So I think there'll be more to come from there. But there you go. Yeah, I haven't caught up with that match. Maybe I will at some point as we build to the big show from Rev Pro. But before we get out of here, a few quick news stories, JP. A few and finally stories to throw in. Got a couple of good news and a couple of bad news stories, I think, to go with this one. one. Could be a good news story, could be a bad news story for you, JP. But to open up the proceedings, Lex Luger has posted a tweet today. I love this one, JP. Put a Christmas tree up. Feels a bit early, but it is November, so I guess that counts. Saying a picture's worth 1,000 words. Trimming his tree. Hasn't been able to do it for almost 2 decades, thanks to his good friend DDP and DDP Yoga. He also says thank you, Jesus. But you know, Americans, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. I like the fact that in his background here, he's got a few. You wouldn't think Lex Luger would give a fuck about wrestling, but a few NWO bits of merch there. I'm not even sure what that is. Looks like a custom belt or something like that. He's got a world heavyweight title, which looks a bit on the small side, but I think it's a real one. A few pictures of his younger self, but brighten my day to see, JP. Nice to see.
Yeah, lovely story. Good on you, Larry, mate. Happy for him that he's able to come that far, considering he was pretty immobile not that long ago. Go on, lad.
There you go. Speaking of immobile, Tony Khan finally slowly got here for AEW, saying he'd love to get Shaq back in the ring. Obviously, Tony Khan quoted as saying this when speaking to Sportico. He said, yeah, he's a dream signing for him in AEW, and we never saw what happened when he remember it, JP? It was 2021 when he was in the ambulance and he disappeared. Well, I don't remember it, you don't remember it, but Tony Khan remembers it, and maybe we'll get a payoff to it one day. I still want to know how that come about. Was it just Shaq being like, oh, I like the Undertaker, I want to be the Undertaker for wrestling, and I'll just disappear when the door closes? That'll be a good mystery we'll never solve. Feels like AEW's Hummer to me. But yeah, maybe we'll get him back one day, according to Tony Khan.
I've got no recollection of that part of the angle. I remember him going through the table. That's as much as I think. I have no recollection. Yeah,
good work.
That was a good fucking lap. Yeah, it was, wasn't it? It was a cracking bump he took in there as well. So, yeah, go bring him back in. What the hell? Why not? Another story here as well. I don't know if you've ever watched Zootopia. It's basically Chinatown, but with animals as an animated film. It's surprisingly good, surprisingly complex, but I won't go into the plot details now. But by all accounts, for Zootopia 2, which is going to be coming out, there's been a rumor about there'd be some WWE involvement in there. But Roman Reigns and CM Punk are going to be voicing zebras in Zootopia 2 in there. They are cops in the film in there as well. It's going to be out November 26th. It could easily be the biggest film of the Christmas period. It probably won't be. It'll be probably Wicked or something along those lines, but it'll be up there. It was a very, very big film. I know I am going to end up watching it at some point, which I'm all right with because I like the first one. So there'll be that novelty value for me when I'll be looking out for a couple of zebras acting as policemen in there as well. And
Street Fighter more my speed, but maybe I'll watch it at some point.
Very much so, but yeah, it'd probably be all right. Someone who isn't going to be appearing in Zootopia is Andrade. Oh, Andrade. He apparently walked out of the Crash's 14th anniversary show in Tijuana, Mexico, trying to work out why in there as well. Dave Meltzer said that Andrade looked visibly frustrated before he left in there. He was on the show, probably the main attraction. He was signing autographs and just left. The only thing that he heard was that he was unhappy. His non-compete is only in the US, so he can work Tijuana and Mexico City. Why didn't he just work CMLL?
If he
just cut
fancies
to the fucking chase in that case. But this bloke here as well, what was he? He was saying he basically said he went to a strip club in there. So that was his line that he used in there as well. But Andrade's going to Andrade, isn't he? At this point in time. And
apparently,
finally,
Andrade did a tweet in response to this saying that apparently he'd gone to a Chinese restaurant, I think, or local strip club.
That's bollocks, strip
in Hong
club,
Kong. Yeah, good lad. He's always
Hong Kong Gentlemen's Club. That's the kind of fella that he is in there as well. And finally, and this feels like Matty should be on really for this one and here, but CMLL have announced a collaborative event with Linkin Park, Noche from Zero, that's on this Friday, which is Team Linkin of Atlantis Jr. and Neon versus Volador Jr. No, it isn't. It isn't them. It's other 3 names on it, 6 names on it that they haven't given any names for. They just put the masks up, and I'm not a fucking mind reader.
And there's no LA Park, I don't believe.
No, there is.
You'd think he'd be on Team Park, wouldn't he?
There's some fellas with big bushy hair on here as well. But yeah, exactly. It doesn't look like LA Park being in there as well.
What is this story? I don't understand it at all.
I don't get it. They do some strange stuff, CMLL, with this, but apparently Linkin Park want in on it as well. So yeah, this is going to be at Arena Mexico. So no doubt sell out. I'll be interested.
They don't need the help, do they, these days?
Oh God, no, they don't. Do they? They don't need the help selling out at all. So yeah, good luck to them. My only condition of this is if they do make an appearance, Matty has to watch the whole show to do as a review. That would be that's the one thing he has to do as the resident Grapple new metal expert.
Yeah, his excuse would be like Andrade's, like Chris Elliott says here. He's off for a succulent Chinese meal instead.
Yeah,
and why wouldn't you? But there you go, worlds colliding there with at CMLL. But cracking it and finally story to wrap us up, JP. But yeah, that's pretty much everything going on in the world of wrestling this week. As we said at the top, plenty of stuff going on the Patreon. Again, if you want our blood and guts takes, if you are listening to this on Thursday, we will have them up on the weekend show on Friday evening. I think an early-ish start on Friday, I believe, JP, for people as well. We'll also be previewing everything going on at the weekends. But of course, on top of that, we will also have plenty of other shows coming up for the rest of the month, JP.
Oh, yeah, we got some cracking shows coming up for the rest of the month on here. Like we say, we've got One Giant Year for Mankind coming up with Marty Ellis this weekend. We've got the Grapple Quiz coming up before we get to the Full Gear pay-per-view, so that's going to be on the Saturday as well as Sean, a Grapple 6 tape. Which is an absolutely phenomenal title that gets better every single time I see that. So those are the things that are coming up. Where do you get that goodness? Grapple.com. Patreon.com/grapple.
There is no grapple.com.
No, there isn't at all. Don't go there at all. So to repeat that again, patreon.com/grapple or youtube.com/@grapple.
There you go. And you get all of our stuff, including all of our member videos. And obviously, we have a few clips we've been throwing up there. Obviously, Matty's been doing his videos over there, as well as everything we've been doing the last while. But yeah, definitely check out the tier list from this weekend. Very proud of that one. And obviously, plenty of cracking stuff coming up this month as well, JP. But yeah, there you go. We'll catch you all again next week for another Spotlight. We'll be back for the weekend show on Friday. But as always, thank you to all of our patrons for tuning in on another Wednesday night. We should be back to Tuesday next week, I think, JP, if preliminary conversations are worth anything. Maybe I'll pull out another New Japan jersey for that show as well.
Please
but yeah,
do.
you can catch us live for that on the Patreon and YouTube as well. But yeah, thank you to our patrons, thank you to our live patrons and live YouTube members too. And as always, thank you to our kings and queens of the mountain, Coral Lachlan, Eddie Sarburns, Chris Platt, Carl Gack, Sophia Hitchcock, Sam Mulvaney, and of course, Marty Ellis, whose show we are doing this weekend. Anything else to say, JP?
All I've got to say is bye.
We'll catch you on the next one. Good night, up.